So I've been reading the comic book sequels to Batman 89 and Batman Returns, titled Batman 89. Have you been reading those, Frank?
I think I might have read like the first 2 or 3 issues, and they just immediately exited my system.
Yeah.
I don't remember them at all.
It's the same screenwriter, and the aesthetics are there, but it's just
Sam Hamm. Is that?
Yeah, Sam Hamm.
Yeah.
But, Sam Hamm did one draft, and the script for the first Batman movie compared to the actual Batman movie we saw is significantly different. As you can see in Denny O'Neil's comic book adaptation of the movie, which was based on the Hamm script as opposed to the final movie. Yeah. See, there are a bunch of differences in there. It's kind of cool. Yeah, if you haven't read that, that's a good Batman read on the turlet on a Sunday afternoon.
That's a long turlet.
Yeah. It goes by fast.
I have zero love or attachment for that movie.
Yeah.
It's whatever. It's a movie.
That's kind of how I feel about it as well. It's not my favorite Batman thing, but it's the thing that imprinted on a nation's psyche.
Sure.
It's the platonic ideal of what Batman is, to the point that Warner Brothers was willing to let Ezra Miller go on an unexplored criminal rampage throughout the United States because there was a chance of getting Michael Keaton on screen.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, great. I'm talking about that Flash movie.
Oh, that thing. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason that wasn't scrapped is because the people at Warner Brothers were so sure that bringing Michael Keaton back to be Batman would just capture the exact same audience as they did in 1989.
So I saw that movie.
Yeah.
And the only redeeming part of that movie was realizing, I actually kind of like Michael Keaton in this role. He's funny. He's doing Michael Keaton stuff. And they obviously did not let him breathe in this movie. You know what I mean? I remember there being a very specific scene. I don't even remember what he's saying or anything, but it's when they're in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
And he's about to do some Michael Keaton thing and it quick cuts away. You see his eyes light up like he's about to do his thing, and then they just cut.
Right.
And it's just whatever that was, I want to see that. I'm here for that.
When are we going to get to the fireworks factory?
I was muted, but I like that Batman 89 movie because just all the practical effects and stuff, and it's pretty wild how that visual aesthetic of what a Art Deco city looks like was just blam. Just suddenly it was there.
From that point, I think that's the biggest impact that the 89 Batman movie has had on Batman. From that point on, that's just what Gotham City looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sets look really cool in those first 2 movies.
Anton Furst, I believe, was the set designer.
Is that ultimately back to Fleischer or not? I wonder.
Because I think it's a little bit Dick Sprang, but Furst did a lot of...
Just pop in here. We're immediately talking names of Batman movie set designers. This is good. Yeah. Pure podcast content, PPC.
PPC.
Let's do it. Who else? Right. Frank, do you have any Batman film set designers you can name drop in here?
No.
Who designed the city of Chicago? Because that was the set designer for The Dark Knight.
A lot of, I'm going to tell you what, whoever designed the city of Chicago, those guys knew what was up, because that's a cool city to hang out in and look at. All the stuff in there is pretty neat. So I think you got a nice layout in there. If you're a fan of layouts in cities, as you might be.
You guys have a favorite skyline?
Favorite skyline? I like the Shanghai Bund skyline.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God darn. Well, what the heck?
I was just watching a movie called China Strike Force with Mark Dacascos and Coolio.
Oh, I've seen that movie.
And it's not very good. It's got some funny bits, but what was very funny to me is some of it is shot in the Shanghai Bund area. And the Oriental Pearl Hotel, etc. There is a hotel near that Pearl where GDC China took place. And that is where the hotel scenes are shot. And it was just very odd to me because I recognized that place so well. Like the entryway, the rooms, it was just like, oh yeah, I've been in this movie. Very odd, curious experience.
I like watching the movie Strange Days, and when they get to the conclusion at the Westin Bonaventure Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, being like, yeah, that's where I live in my mind.
Me and Chris Graft watched Face Off while we were at E3.
At E3, yeah.
Not realizing that the end of the movie takes place at E3.
The beginning is all the bomb the bomb situation is all
The end of the net is at E3. That's what I was confusing.
Yeah, that old LA Convention Center ought to really do it. If you need a place that looks like an airport but isn't.
What about you, Frank? Are you a bund head?
What?
We're talking about Skylines.
You ever been to the Bund?
No.
Never been to the Bund?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's an area of Shanghai.
Nobody beats the Bund.
I've never been.
Oh, here! Wow, here. I'm gonna paste in a photo. Okay. You're gonna see it in the secret room of the Discord, so that other people can't see it. That's the Shanghai Bund skyline.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's what I call a broader Bund.
You know what? It's pretty weird. It doesn't look super well designed. It looks really fake when you're there in person and you look at it.
Yeah.
There's this one tower that looks like Final Fantasy meets 1001 Arabian Nights. There's a building that looks like a bottle opener.
Yeah.
And there's something that looks like Burj Dubai Jr. I don't know, man. I love it, though.
The top of that bottle opener building, it's so there's like a fancy bar / cafe up there. I went up there and
yeah, I've been up there.
Took a look, and it's up there.
I had a cappuccino with American McGee up there. That's the story that matters to anybody.
It definitely looks 90s CG to me.
Yes.
It doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's what they call a cappuccino Americano, right? When you have it with American McGee.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
that guy went off the deep end. Unfortunately, it's too bad.
Now, let's not worry about him having gone off the deep end. It's funny to think of him as a guy who made a really bad level in Doom Episode 4. That's not that bad. It's okay. It's fine. It's just it immediately precedes the best Doom level of all time. So
suffers by comparison.
So yeah, I would call Shanghai's The Bend with its weird 90s CG looking tower. I would call it the best skyline that gets scores under 80 on Metacritic of all time.
Yeah, the Bund is definitely it's like they just shot a bunch of buildings down from space or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like there's all this stuff about how porous the Earth is and like stuff is sinking because they built like 4 of the world's tallest skyscrapers within like a year, all on like one like 8 block zone.
Yeah,
it's very funny.
All right, we probably have a longer episode today, so let's
we'll see.
Start.
We might
soon.
not.
Yeah, we might not. We might zoom through it.
I'll have something to say about that in a minute once we actually start the show.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I think we should have a nice little bit of a pre-talk about this as well.
Oh, don't worry, I have it built in.
Let's crush.
Technical Arts energy is charged. Purify weird soul. Step on it. Press button. This is Insert Credit Annual number 5, our yearly reassessment by 3 video game experts on the subject of which video game deserves the title of the best game of all time, with arbitrary format and choice restrictions of my own devising. I'm Alex Jaffe, and when I think about Metacritic, I think about the time just after high school where I tried to give myself a film education by watching all of the highest Metascored films and feeling like I had to pretend I thought Sideways was really funny.
Oh, Sideways is all right.
I didn't get it at the time.
Giamatti, dude.
I'm Frank Cifaldi, and when I think about Metacritic, that was at the prompt, something like that. I think about arbitrary bonuses for game developers based on Metacritic scores, and I get really upset.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's bad as heck. I'm Tim Rogers, and when I think about Metacritic, I don't really think about Metacritic at all, to be perfectly honest. I think about how when Alex Jaffe mentioned this as what the format of this year's Best Games of All Time show is, I responded by saying that it's a little weird for me personally to try to think about Metacritic at all, because I spent a long portion of my life sharpening my own critical faculties for understanding objects of art and design so that I could make something I like myself someday, and taking any stock at all or even pretending to, in the words of other critics, just the prospect of that makes me feel a little bit sad. So that's how I feel when I think about Metacritic today, right now.
Wow.
And the thing about bonuses for game developers and people getting fired over Metascores also, obviously, I'm not going to just not ignore that.
Of course.
But it's just, I pity the fool who has to look at Metacritic in order to decide whether they want to play a game or not. That's the fool I pity most today. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Brandon Sheffield, and I agree with all that stuff that everybody else said. And also, when I think about Metacritic, I remember a time that wasn't even that long ago when one of my games, Gunhouse, was going to be potentially included in a compilation release that was like a physical disc release of a few games just to get a little extra money dollars. And one of the critical factors was that it had to have an 80 on, or I think it was above a 70. It was actually above a 70 on Metacritic in order to be included in the compilation, and we did.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, what did you have? Like a 4?
I think we had a 70.
You have like a 4?
The thing that we had that was a 4 is we had 4 ratings.
And my game has an 82.
We had 3 like high ones, and then one that was a 60 or 50, and so that brings the whole thing like only 4 reviews period of the game, and then and that becomes the critical opinion. When one person didn't like it, then it just like goes way down. It's that's what Metacritic's all about these days, especially because the people who are on Metacritic are randos, most of them, and most of them won't review your game. Hyper Gunsport doesn't have enough reviews to have a Metacritic score, because it's got, I think it has 4 reviews, but across 4 or 5 platforms, so it's not in aggregate.
Need platform-specific reviews.
Metacritic is a relic from the 90s that started well into the 2000s.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. I lament the loss of GameRankings.com, which did the same thing as Metacritic, but slightly better.
I never looked at that. I knew it existed, but I never looked at it.
Yeah, so as we've alluded, the premise this year is that I've restricted our panel in the following way. This year, the only games that they're allowed to nominate must have a Metacritic score below 80. This means that most foreign games, most independent games, and most games released before 1998 won't be eligible, along with any modern mainstream games eligible for their industry standard corporate approval for scoring an 80 or higher. So ideally, all of the games we talk about today will be games where somebody got yelled at by somebody who doesn't play video games but owns a studio for not being good enough.
So something weird about this is I was making a list just based on my brain, and I'm a little worried that my list might not be particularly interesting to people because it's just all the games I talk about all the time anyway.
It's validation.
Yeah. So I mean, that's I was going to say something similar to that, which is again, having sharpened my critical faculties and deciding, not just knowing what I like. There's a phase in your life where you learn how to know what you like, right? And then there's a separate act, which is deciding what you like. None of that has ever had anything to do with assigning or perceiving a numerical score for a game, for me, right? So I've got a list of 46 games here that I think are some of the best games of all time, all of which scored under 80 on Metacritic. It was very easy for me to find them. It was very fun to type them up and to just type them in and go, yeah, dude.
Try to sink a battleship.
Yeah, I did about 20 something, and one of the side experiments I had here was like I would type in a game and I'd be like, well, that one's on Tim's list for sure, and that one's probably going to be Frank. So because there's so many that we talk about.
I just type them up. You just type them up, Carl.
So the problem I had is the usual problem, which is that I don't play as many games as the other panelists on the show.
Right.
So mine is a list of the games that I played that fit your criteria. Half of them I made.
You know what? That is basically a roll every year. So there's no difference between this year and any previous one.
Man, Frank, you could have done
I
it.
went through the entire. I swear to God,
done
like
it.
I went through and I made a list of literally everything that I played, and it was less than 20.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
And most of them are ones that I made.
Well, you only need 7, so.
Yep.
That's right. So Brandon, it seems like you did the most homework. So why don't we start with you?
I don't know if I think Frank actually did the most if he went through that list, because I was just thinking of stuff.
And by the way, when I say I went through the list, I stopped at 70 or 69. I don't remember, but I don't know what's past that.
Okay,
I didn't go through no list either. I looked up around 100 games and was pleasantly surprised at the 46 that were under 80 on Metacritic. And also, I want to say one thing I consciously did. I got 2 little notes here. Mm-hmm. One is I consciously avoided what I consider to be the worst thing we could do in this episode, which is find the one game from a now critically beloved series that was scored on Metacritic before the critics got it, which if it came out today would get 95s or whatever, right?
Right.
For example, if one looks hard enough, one can find a bunch of Yakuza games that got in the 70s on Metacritic.
Yeah, so I put a couple of those in my maybe pile in case we got desperate. But I agree that that's cheating. And also,
I eschewed those from my pile.
I also
I eschewed them
in my maybe pile, but didn't want to get into it because it felt like cheating.
Yeah.
Games where the platform that I played it on had a really low rating, but it's on 4 platforms, and one of them is 81.
So I didn't look at that at all. By the way, like I assume multi-platform. We cool with that?
Yeah. So and then one thing that I encountered, one of the games that I chose, I had to make a quick numerologist's referee call on it. It had 3 versions on Metacritic. I would say, and I believe Brandon would agree, that all 3 of them are actually different games. They are not the same game, but they are nominally the same. One of them has an 80, and the other 2 versions have a 79, meaning the average score of the 3 is 79.6667, right? I decided that the one I liked the most was one of the 79s. So that coin flip, I'm like, I don't care.
That's the correct call. Yes,
I think that's
the one that I decided that was okay. But almost nothing on my list is actually multi-platform. Most of my stuff is just one platform.
I have quite a few like sort of remakes or like compilations on here, but I feel like I have good things to say about that.
As long as the version of the game you are nominating has below an 80, then it counts for this list.
I don't know what version. I just wrote game titles. Right. Like I just went through the list.
I did avoid re-releases because that felt like it got 2 shots at being one thing or another thing, so I avoided those. But anyway, I can start because Frank stopped at 69. Nice. So I'm going to start with
How about we start with a game that everybody can agree on?
Oh.
I don't know. We don't have to.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure. No, I can do it.
Nier for the Xbox 360 is a 67, right?
Yes.
That's on here, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. I guess Tim gets to start. That's fine.
Go for it.
No, I mean, I don't really feel like that's one of mine. I thought that was one of yours. That was
it is one of mine.
Okay. Yeah, so it's yours.
But then I get more if you don't.
No, it's not one of mine because I've never even really played it.
Nier is definitely an agree. That's a 67.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that at all.
Yeah, and Nier is obviously, we've talked about it maybe about 500 to 600 million times on this show. Let's do it again. It's got what's it got? It's got good music. It's got weird vibes. It's got a lot of very mild narrative ingenuity, but also some very deep lore stuff in there that's really quite deep. And it's also sort of, I'm a weirdo who doesn't like 3D action a lot of the time. And the particular clunkiness / smoothness of Nier is probably the right spot for me 3D action wise. It's not so smooth as a Platinum game where I feel like, why am I hitting this button? It's not so exacting as an actual exacting game where I feel frustrated and want to give up. It's right in that middle zone, which probably most people don't like, but that's what's perfect for me. You can drift a warthog, and it's just it's a cool game, and I like it.
It's got ambition. It tries to do stuff.
Oh, is that the one that you're a daddy?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a dad on the 361.
Okay, I'm gonna say that like because it's a dad game, like that's gonna factor into my rankings later. So
okay,
I don't like daddy games,
but it's a brother game on the PS3, and
I'm good with brother game.
And then the PlayStation 4 remake is only brother. You don't get to be the dad.
Yeah. So the Xbox 361 is a unique game. It's a unique version among all the versions of the game, and it's also 4K 60 on the Xbox Series X, which is exciting for everyone to know. I think Nier is a good one to have pretty high up on a list. Despite my not having played it as much as I would like. I'm saving it for a particular reason. I'm going to play it somewhat soon, actually, believe it or not. Nier is... we can't put Dark Savior on this list, and we can't put Undertale on this list. So Nier 100% is the, I believe, philosophical exact middle ground between Dark Savior and Undertale.
I would agree.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing as much as I do.
Tim, did you also look up to see whether Dark Savior was just maybe on the list somehow? Because I did.
I just kind of figured nothing on Saturn. I barely looked up anything on Saturn.
There's a couple Saturn games, but Dark Savior's not on there.
Yeah, Dark Savior. I noticed Alundra was like an 88 or something. When I typed in Dark Savior, I saw the Ninja Saviors Return of the Warriors for the Nintendo Switch was a 79. It's I love the original Ninja Warriors. I'm not gonna put that on this list though.
It's my same assertion.
All right, I'm calling time.
Number 1 of 1.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 1 so far.
All right.
Jerry.
Who's next after Brandon by way of Tim?
Let me have Frank do one. I have so many on this list.
All right.
Yeah, I want to choose based on how stuff goes.
Okay. I'm gonna do maybe the one that has the best chance of ranking anywhere here. Anodyne. Anodyne is a small indie, I would say Link's Awakening like, that's out for I think everything at this point and is always on sale for like $2. And it's good stuff. It's got a pretty weird vibe. You're like a janitor who mops stuff up or something, but also it's a little 2D Zelda like. It's a little bit creepy, but in a genuine way. Like they're not trying to creep you out. You know, it's just kind of creepy naturally. It's got pretty good art, and the developer's real nice on Twitter. So Anodyne.
Oh, is that the developer's got to be?
It's a fact. I thought about playing this a bunch of times, and I never did it.
It is something that you can do in like 2 decent sessions. So that's another solid. Should be higher than an 80 for that reason.
You know, I'm realizing that based on where you stopped, some of the games that I was like, well, that'll be on Frank's list, are not going to be on your list.
Really? You think like I played stuff below 69?
I do.
Man, should I look more? Okay.
Man.
Oh, I still have it open. Okay, page 386. I'll keep clicking while y'all
wait.
talk.
You seriously? Wait. Okay. Oh, you mean you didn't just like type in names of games to see if they were on the list?
I don't have the mental database of games that you two have. Like I was going through this list.
What's this one? What's this one right here though? Like what's that? Like I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, you ever heard of that one, Frank?
You ever heard of this one? Like for example, like look at that number, right? That number's pretty low, isn't it? I know you played that one.
I sure did.
This was on my list of Frank definitely has this.
So I actually went to 65. It turns out.
Shoot, you should have gone a little lower.
I'm going
a little bit lower.
I'm going. I'm still going. I've decided
put that one on your list, Frank.
All right.
Enough sure. Okay, fine.
Because I have a similar one that I want to put on my list.
Has anyone else played Anodyne, or is it just Frank?
I think it's just Frank.
I dabbled in it somewhat briefly, and I own it on Steam.
Everyone owns it on Steam.
Yeah,
that's how you get it.
I believe it was like 14 cents at the time I bought it.
All right. A nice one to put below Nier for now, I think.
Nier for now.
Nier for now.
Tim?
Oh, you want me to put one on here? Is that what you want, Carl?
That is what I would like, yes.
Man, I got too many good ones. Yeah,
there's a lot of hot ones out there in the world.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and say Steambot Chronicles is the 74, which is very exciting for me.
That's a 74?
Yeah, 74.
That game's great.
Yeah, it's one of the best games of all time. I would not hesitate.
Frank, I'm not convinced you looked at this list very well.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of games that you really like that are on Metacritic that and are under an 80. Though Steambot Chronicles is a 74. And this is the game that is somewhat similar to the game I told Frank he should do if he's thinking about it. It's weird that it's a 74 because the top 3 reviews are 80, 80, and 90. But somehow it ends up, you scroll a little bit down the critics' reviews and IGN 73. The ton of slowdown and the touch and go controls for Trotmobiles leaves Steambot a decent, albeit flawed, title for RPG fans. Cliches through the roof. Game Zone 71. If you're a fan of all the different types of gameplay, mecha combat and rhythm gaming in particular, then you should give Steambot Chronicles a try. GameSpot 71. Steambot Chronicles comes with a few blemishes, but it offers a variety of mini-games and a malleable story wrapped in a charming little world. Charming Little World is a 7 out of 10.
I see that Game Informer called it a clunkier version of Katamari Damacy.
Yeah, which is weird. Well, because you control your thing with 2 sticks.
I guess.
Game Critics gave it a 45, which is what ended up kind of really tanking the score. Yeah. Humor and unusual storytelling can't save it from stiff controls and an awkward camera. You control the camera with the right analog stick, buddy. So maybe you're awkward. Game Informer 55, the characters are shallow. Amnesia strikes again. And the combat utilizes a clunkier version of the Katamari Damacy dual analog controls. Yeah, wild. Amnesia strikes again. Maybe they should have had Amnesia. I don't know what I'm saying.
It's halfway there.
But I love that game. That game's got an enormous amount of soul and spirit. I feel like it would have had a much better shot in the United States of America were it released under its true superior Nihongo title, Ponkotsu Roman Daikatsugeki Banpi Toroto. I really feel like it would have done a lot better here if it had been called Bumpy Trot.
All right, where are we ranking Bumpy Trot?
I would put Bumpy Trot at number 2 right now.
Yeah, I guess put it at number 2.
Yep.
Number 2 is fine. Carl.
I like that too. And that concludes round 1. 6 rounds to go.
All right.
Okay. So it's me now.
Yep.
I had a hard time choosing on this one because every Earth Defense Force game is under 80.
Yeah, which is really weird. Yeah. I kind of thought that there would have.
I thought there might have been one that got an 80.
There was no Renaissance. So I have a bunch. I have a bunch of them on this bottom of this list area. That's like there's too many of these.
Yeah.
You remember Earth Defense Force 2 for the PlayStation 2 getting a million. Getting kind of actualied into oblivion, right? Like when it was a simple series game, people are like, there's this crazy game from Japan that's $20 and it's crazy.
It's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, and it became sort of a thing. And there was an Xbox 360 one. And
that one actually really broke the game through to the mainstream a bit more.
Yeah, because it was released in the West, right?
Yes.
This was never a factor for me because I could just walk to my local Yodobashi camera and buy them. But yeah, now there have been 800 million billion trillion of them, and they're all the Sandlot ones. You got to restrict it to the Sandlot ones, right?
Yeah. So. We don't remember Insect Armageddon. Iron Rain is fine, but it's not.
Iron Rain's fine. Yeah, I like Iron Rain.
So I had to choose one, and so I don't know if it's too weirdly specific, but I chose Earth Defense. I'm combining 2, if that's okay. Earth Defense Force 2017 and the portable version of it.
I think Earth Defense Force 2017 is a good one. Yeah. To just say it's that one.
The reason I'm including portable is because it's got Pale Wing. Earth Defense Force 2017 was missing Pale Wing, which is the flying version of the flying character.
I think Pale Wing's a little broken.
Pale Wing's definitely broken, but that adds a particular kind of jank that appeals to me.
I think Earth Defense Force is so good, I don't really particularly need jank to be entertained by it, but I understand why other people do.
Yeah, well,
I think the straight up shooting is just tasty as heck.
I don't mean it in a in like a lol, look at that kind of way. I mean it's an experiment that worked to me. That they didn't complete all the way, but it's a good experiment that worked is kind of what I mean. So Earth Defense Force 2017 / portable, if it doesn't really matter, but Earth Defense Force 2017 is just a lot of enemies, a lot of fun weapons. I think one of the reasons I like 2017 more is because you get the Cascade rocket a lot faster in that version, and the Cascade rocket is just so fun to use. You just like shoot
Blow up
off
a lot
20
of
rockets
stuff.
at once. It's blasting the universe, and you watch these giant robots just ragdolling and jiggling around as they get hit by 20 rockets. It's enjoyable, and I like destroying the buildings as much as I shouldn't.
It's very exciting the first time in Earth Defense Force 2.
Yeah.
You kind of point your guy very horribly, awkwardly toward a camera or toward a building and fire a rocket that blows the building up like 4 seconds later. It's real good stuff.
And it's also one of those series where you understand why the score on Metacritic is low, because there's slowdown, it's repetitive, it's got a variety of the kinds of problems that would reduce a review score, but it's very fun and it doesn't matter. All that stuff that reduces the score doesn't matter.
There was a thing at around like the early Xbox 360 sort of era where there were a lot of video game critics were having sort of their like 1990s movie critic phase where, you know, in the 90s, whenever me and Mimsy are looking at movies on the Apple TV, there's always like low Rotten Tomatoes scores for all the cool movies from the 90s.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was like any action movie was getting kind of kicked in the shins by the critics. I feel like that phase was kind of happening early in the Xbox 360. And early PS2 games were almost universally 60 FPS. And it wasn't until later that they started getting lower frame rate ones. And with Digital Foundry not existing as a popular YouTube channel at that time, critics were very inarticulate about they weren't able to articulate. The game just feels wrong. It's got a lot of slowdown, you know. It was so that kind of beat up Earth Defense Force pretty much forever.
Is it better than Bumpy Trot?
No,
nope.
I like it better, but I'm willing to make it number 3. And also, let's call it Earth Defense Force 2017 /Portable. I'm combining them.
Got it.
I've decided that since they're all below 80, I can do what I want.
You can. The government can't stop you.
No,
Frank, you're next.
It's too early to get weird, I guess, right? But like we're trying to do some actual placement ones here.
Yeah.
Say so.
Yeah, okay.
might as well.
Should I just take the one that was handed to me?
Do it.
No, you know what? No. I'm going to do one that I just found by going below 65 that I didn't think about. Little PS2 game, which is the land of 60s.
I love that one.
Called Flipnik. Flipnik is a really weird pinball game that I don't know how to describe it. It almost feels like a luxury hotel lobby, but a pinball game. It's just, it has like really relaxing music and weird metallic surfaces and lighting and I don't ever quite understand what the goals are, but I keep playing it anyway. It's very, very Japanese. I don't know what I mean by that, but I think you do. And yeah, it's good stuff. Good, weird little pinball game. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my other pinball game from here.
I suspect that a lot of the low scores here, and based on the summaries I'm seeing right now, I seem to be right. They would give to literally any pinball game. It suffers by virtue of being a pinball video game.
Yeah, they're like, we don't want to play pinball.
Yeah,
well, and that's why a lot of these like compilations are here and the stuff I worked on, because it's like, wow, they did a lot of great work on this, but these old games are old.
Yeah.
Game Critics says in their 70 review, it's unfortunate then that such a beguiling front end is offset by the ruthlessness of the game's ill-fitting emphasis on progression and unlocking new areas.
Wow.
Jeez.
That's a weird accent that they wrote.
Yeah.
I think Flipnik is a great representative of one of my favorite genres, which is like digital pinball that can only happen
Yep.
in the video realm, that you couldn't make these actual tables because
But it's not like
the Hearthstone of
it's
pinball.
not super fantastical, but
it's not super fantastical, and it's also not loud. You know, most of these are really loud. This is just kind of relaxing and weird.
Maxim Online. Yeah, it's still just a video game version of pinball, but at least it won't steal all of your quarters like the arcade version of My Little Pony.
What?
That was very odd. But
The
yeah, that's a good one.
arcade version of My Little Pony.
Oh, here's something that is going to be relevant later. Official U.S. PlayStation Magazine says in their 6 out of 10 review, the expanded table and wacky ideas are great, but it's the novel stuff that wears thin first.
Oh, no.
Interesting.
That's false.
I wanted traditional pinball.
Game Shark, in their 33 out of 100, says quite simply, it screams bargain bin. You could say it's so bad it could be a cult classic, but you'll have to give it a few years. Otherwise, avoid it. Wow.
I would say it was a mistake for them to program that the game screams bargain bin every time you hit the flippers. I probably would have taken that out.
Well, this conversation has got me wanting to play Flipnik again. So
Yeah, I
that's
actually do want to play Flipnik right now.
Flipnik's all right.
Where do we rank it?
Number 4, above Anodyne.
Yeah.
Frank fulfilling his traditional role of filling at the bottom of the list. All right, Tim, you're next.
Well, so I've got, I'm trying to pick things that feel right for this list as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the next game I want to put on here is the thing about JRPGs. I just want to preface this. The thing about JRPGs is, there's a lot of things about JRPGs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
One of the things about JRPGs is that they've gone through I don't know how diplomatically or how to put this diplomatically. It's they've been through series where they get bullied by different types of critics depending on the period of history you're in. Different types of critics will hate on JRPGs at different points in video game history, and it just so happens that one of the best JRPGs came out during the period most friendly to JRPGs, yet somehow received less than an 80 on Metacritic, which is interesting to me. And that game is none other than Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter, which got a 78.
Whoa.
So Dead Rising had zombies in it, so it has above 80 on Metacritic. But Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter is a very similar game structure-wise, in terms of you replay the narrative multiple times to encounter multiple endings. Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter is basically the perfect philosophical midpoint between Dark Savior and Nier in terms of history. So it's kind of it deserves to be on this list for that reason. And also, it's just a darn good game. It's got a fantastic soundtrack. It's got an incredible atmosphere. It's got the same fake language used in games that must be excluded from this list because they're too critically beloved, such as Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and Panzer Dragoon. It's got a whole lot of cool stuff going for it, and the reason it was critically maligned at the time it was released was because it was too cool. It was too interesting. Like, that's literally it boils exactly down to that. When Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter came out, the average critic who liked RPGs disliked it more than the average critic who generally didn't love or hate RPGs either way, who could take or leave them. The average critic who liked RPGs disliked it because it was so cool. I don't know how else to put it. There's no simpler way to put it. It was just too cool of a game. It was too modern, too fancy, too AAA, too prestige, too exciting, too interesting. Certainly more exciting and interesting than most prestige games are now. Just atmosphere, etc., etc. It got roundly shouted about for not having enough character or charisma or humor or lightheartedness or whimsy or shonen manga-ishness to it that people just kind of assumed was the birthright of the JRPG lover, that they deserved games that were whimsical and whatnot. And yes, to be sure, the Breath of Fire series until that point had been all largely a primary colored affair, but there was always darkness at the core of them. They got darker and darker as the narratives went on, as time went on. It was only a matter of time before they made one about here's a civilization that's lived underground for a few thousand years. And then there was that Apple TV series last year, Silo. That was basically the Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter, the young adult book adaptation, the TV show. I think it's time to... that show is horrible. I think it's time to celebrate Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter. Thank you.
Let's do it. Brandon, Frank, have you played this game?
No.
Yeah, I played it. I do prefer hearing Tim talk about it to actually playing it. For whatever reason, it never... I can see all the things that he's talking about, but it never actually grabbed me myself.
Yeah.
You can appreciate his appreciation.
There's a you had to be there-esque aspect to this game.
Yeah, I think so.
If you were there at that time, it was quite an explosive game. I mean, I loved all the Breath of Fires prior to that, so I'm in the minority of people who liked all the Breath of Fires and then also liked Breath of Fire 5 when it came out. Whereas the typical Breath of Fire fan, it's just kind of, I think it's a neat little case study in what happens when, for the 5th entry in a pretty consistent series, you go completely bonkers and reinvent a whole bunch of stuff. It's a neat little case study in that.
I support
it. Given how receptive mainstream critics, which, that's who we're talking about when we talk about Metacritic. Given how receptive mainstream critics are now to structurally playful Japanese role-playing games, such as the Persona series, it's just neat to think about Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter being a little misunderstood, misliked at the time.
So where do we put this 5th entry as our 6th entry?
Good question. Do you want to put it above or below Earth Defense Force?
Oh, I mean...
Or did you want to put it at the top?
I wouldn't put it at the top. I would put it, because basically it's a shooting match right now between Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter and Bumpy Trot, which is what we're canonically calling Steambot Chronicles. That's
Absolutely,
good.
Yeah.
I'm personally more interested in Bumpy Trot.
Yeah,
Bumpy Trot just sounds cool. I tried to tell him, to tell him at the time.
When I hear Steambot Chronicles, I want to say, do you mean Steamboat Chronicles? But no, they do not.
You mean that game about Willie? Yeah.
Yeah, it's public domain.
Williams Chronicle. So you're saying
so it's 3? A shooting match between Bumpy Trot and Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter. You know what? I'm going to put Bumpy T on top. I'm going to put Bumpy T up on top.
Yeah, especially since Frank agrees. I think that's the fair way to go.
And it's also, we don't want to have 2 games about... multiple playthrough Japanese role-playing games occupying the top 2 slots. Yeah. Best separate them ASAP.
With a bump.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us to round 3.
It's my turn. It's I'm very self-conscious about this list because it's so boring to me, this list, because it's just my games that I like. The games I talk about here, is that okay? Like, is that fine?
Not only is that okay, I think people like to hear it.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna go with a classic system launcher, the 6th and 7th of which, both below 80. The last 2 big boys, Ridge Racer 6 and 7. I'm deciding to do 6 because I like the UI, even though 7 is probably better because it's got more stuff in it. But I've talked about this before, but just getting into Ridge Racer 6, I don't know, 10, 15 years after it came out again, and sitting down when I was having a not the greatest day, but I finally got my 360 functional again. I had got my gamer tag working and everything, and I put it in, and there's this cool green and white hexagonal UI stuff where I'm like, oh, okay, they're thinking about the Xbox. That's fun. And get to the first race, and it pans over like a sunset seascape. Maybe it was the second race. Doesn't matter. And the announcer says, "The car is perfect, the track is perfect, and I feel perfect." And you go on this race with this delightful drum and bass music playing, and it's just like, yeah, this is exactly what I need.
Hold on. We can't let someone call any drum and bass music delightful.
Oh, I think
the drum and bass musicians of the world would be offended by that.
No,
they're my music's me music's not delightful, mate. It's serious.
Hardcore.
It's intelligent stuff, they would say.
Well, that's intelligent drum and bass.
Yeah. So I've got a couple things to say about Ridge Racer. This is fun. I knew that you were going to choose a Ridge Racer 6 or 7. Yeah. I personally would have chosen Ridge Racer 5. I don't care either way.
Yeah, Ridge Racer 5 is also under there.
Ridge Racer 5 is the one that's the most interesting to me because it's where critics realized the truth that had always been, which was that Ridge Racer has always been a 7 out of 10 video game franchise.
And how few tracks it has. They're like, it's bad now.
Yeah. Why has it only got 3 tracks, man? So it's when I was talking before the show about or at the beginning about how like so many old Yakuzas are under 80, but now they're all over 80 or in the 90s. So that disqualifies Yakuza. Ridge Racer is sort of the opposite, where we have the first couple games in the series, which are not on Metacritic, were probably in their 90s, right?
Yeah, like Ridge Racer should have been a 7 out of 10, but I like it.
Estimated the historical estimated Metacritic score, the HEMC of Ridge Racers 1 through 4 is probably upper 80s. Ridge Racer Type 4 is probably like a 90.
Probably a 90, 91.
Yeah, something like that. But they've always been 7 out of 10 video games. Sega racing games have been the good ones. All the Ridge Racer games that we know most intimately are the home console ports, right? Ridge Racer 64 is the one on Metacritic with over 80, which is very funny. Ridge Racer Type 4 has an 88. Wait, why does it have an 88?
I think one of the PSP ones is also 80.
Yeah. Okay, so some of them have 80s, but I think it's fine to mention these 5, 6, and 7, the last 3 Ridge Racers, where critics started using words like underwhelming, which wasn't a word in the year 2000, and it's still not a word in my opinion.
Also the common link between the above 80 Metacritic Ridge Racers is, we can play it on this finally. So the N64 one is like, Nintendo finally got a Ridge Racer, and the portable ones are like, well, at least I can play Ridge Racer on the go. So that's they had caveats in their above 80.
I personally never wanted to play Ridge Racer on the go.
I didn't either.
Yeah,
but
I mean, though
they added more music, so I was excited about it.
Yeah, it was pretty neat, I guess.
I will confess that the PSP Ridge Racer is the only one I have played, and I liked it. I liked it a lot.
It's good.
And I bet if I played a real Ridge Racer, I would like it a lot more.
I'd say it's real. It's real too.
Yeah, I always see people, you always perceive people, especially in the modern times, you perceive people saying, why don't they make a new Ridge Racer? And there's such a clear reason.
Yeah.
Which is...
It's because it costs a lot of money and it won't make a lot of money.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money, and they got, in the eyes of the vast majority of the game-playing, game-buying public, they got just shotgun outclassed by... Gran Turismo, Forza, whatever. And it's like, it turns out that's kind of what Namco wanted to do. They kind of wanted to make a Gran Turismo. And then they just never really got it to, they never put all the eggs in the right basket, I guess.
As a piece of sort of hotel lobby hardware, I like the idea of putting this around Flipnik.
And why not? Because, why not?
Yeah,
I would put it under Earth Defense Force.
I think under Earth Defense Force right now.
That's a good place for it.
Yeah, just keep me on the bottom. That's the important part.
Dude. Well, I handed you an opportunity to get.
I'm holding on to it. It's there
to get higher up there.
He's holding his cards. Well, Frank, you got one right now.
Do it, Charles.
This is number 3, right? For me,
this is your third. Yes.
Round 3.
Okay. I don't know if this would have made the list if I wasn't offended just now by the score.
Oh, excellent.
So, coming in with a Metacritic score of 57 is Tulip for the PS2.
Yeah, there you go.
57 for Tulip.
How many critic reviews are we looking at for that one?
Where does it say that?
It says it up near the top.
10 reviews.
Oh, that's not that many. Oh, so these are probably all...
It's not that few either.
So some of these are...
RPG Fan is an 85, and then the next one down is one up with a 65.
IGN, 60. Fans of Japanese zaniness will have a swell time wandering the streets of Long Life Town trying to kiss everything in sight, but everyone else will be left frustrated and ultimately uninterested. Okay.
Well, it is frustrating. It is frustrating.
It is. So
it is an extraordinarily frustrating game.
What I'm nominating here is the first 3 hours of Tulip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it deserves to be on here.
It hits a wall at some point and becomes a game that is impossible to suss out, and you just have to read the walkthrough. But up until a certain point, it's delightful. It's a game about moving to a new town and wanting to kiss everybody, and it's
to make them happier.
to make them happier, right? It's not creepy.
It's not creepy.
And the kiss is not necessarily like sexual or anything. It's just like it makes people happy. Yeah.
Yeah, you kiss all genders and whatever.
It is maybe a genre that I think is underserved. I can't think of too many more examples. I would say the original Animal Crossing
Captain
is
Rainbow, Giftopia.
Well, the genre I was about to say is you're moving to a new place and everyone's a little bit hostile.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So like the original Animal Crossing, I would count like that too.
So I've in my video about Boku no Natsuyasumi, I made a little video. I spend a good hour as a bit of like a takedown of Animal Crossing as just being a cowardly game designer's spin on something like Tulip.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Boku no Natsuyasumi. It's a commoditization. It's a capitalismization of these games that are just actually kind of about community.
Yeah.
And they're not bragging about it, right? So that's something that really appeals to me. I liked Tulip so much that I became very good friends for a period of decades with its producer guy, Yoshiro Kimura.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've heard him say that if he were to do it again today,
he would make it much easier.
He would make it much easier.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
which is like it was in the era where you had to make your game difficult or people got upset with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it's worth saying on this podcast that the American version, first of all, was pretty rare because it was GameStop exclusive.
Yeah.
But second of all,
crooks.
to put the difficulty in perspective, this is not a like Twitch difficulty. It's a puzzle solving difficulty. Yeah. Like how do you get people
Order
to like
of operations
you?
Difficulty.
Right. And the manual, the in the jewel case, not jewel case, the DVD case for the PS2 game, full walkthrough for the entire game. It's just right in there because that's how hard.
Kind of rules.
They got you covered.
Kind of puts it as sort of a missing link between Earthbound and Undertale, in a sense.
There we
you
go.
Could say.
I suppose you could.
Undertale being inspired by Moon remix RPG adventure, and Tulip being a spiritual sequel to Moon remix RPG adventure, which is much harder and much more or less forgiving and more punishing even than Tulip.
I hope one of our listeners is making this genealogy graph.
So like the thing about it being a GameStop exclusive, Tulip being a GameStop exclusive, is Game Informer, which would later become the official magazine of GameStop, called it. Gave it.
They were at this point, I think.
They were. Well, they gave it a 30 out of 100. They gave it a 3 out of 10. They gave it an IGN God Hand score. They said this is a quirky Japanese kissing game. I say kiss it goodbye because it's not worth your time. Some games are just made broken. I don't mean broken in the bug-riddled sense, but Tulip is probably one of the most poorly designed games I have ever played.
Wow. Sounds like bottom of the list to me.
And then every time you click on one of these reviews, it's a 404.
Oh, also
love the internet.
Another thing we should mention about Tulip, if people haven't played it, is the delightful visual style, which is a trip to a particular era. Is it the Taisho?
It's your Taisho. It's a pretty Taisho'd up zone.
Pretty Taisho era of Japan, and you get this kind of like.
And the town is based on the real life town of Minami Senju, which is where I lived at the time the game came out.
The first place I ever stayed in Japan as well.
I lived in Minami Senju for 4 years. I don't really recommend. You know, every once in a while I get a message, an email from somebody who's like, "I'm hanging out in Minami Senju."
It's a completely different town now.
Because I remember you talking about it, and I'm like, I didn't tell you to hang out there.
Pretty much got torn down and rebuilt.
We got to rank
place.
Tulip.
Yeah. Well, I think it's got to be below Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter.
That's actually the literal place I was thinking. It was right below there.
I was thinking above Ridge Racer because Earth Defense Force is so playable, but Tulip is more interesting. Okay, fine. Fine.
Given the long tail on games like Animal Crossing, I think it's fun to have Tulip stand for all that.
Totally I think most people's minds would be blown by what Animal Crossing could be.
If only Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 had come out in America, we could put that up there instead. Because it definitely would have gotten like a 64 out of 100.
Yeah. Who wants to catch bugs with a net?
Yeah. Who wants to be a little boy?
Tim, you got the next one.
Well, am I going to pick a game about being a little boy? Yes. I'm going to choose the game.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Oh.
I'm going to go ahead and choose. Man, okay, this is getting hard because it's like I wanted to put this game on this list, but I didn't know Brandon was going to put a Ridge Racer on, even though I kind of assumed he would. I was going to try to put this on before you put a Ridge Racer on. But Outrun Online Arcade for Xbox 360.
Oh, yeah.
This is the game I alluded to in the beginning. You know, I've got to put it on here.
Outrun 2 is also under.
Well, no. So there's 3 Outrun games on Metacritic that 3 Outrun 2 versions that are on Metacritic.
Yeah.
And this is what I alluded to in the beginning.
Yeah,
Outrun,
the 3 different
2006 Coast to Coast is an 81. Outrun Online Arcade is a 79, and Outrun 2 for Xbox is 79 as well.
Yeah.
And it's like it was a toss up for me between Outrun Online Arcade and Outrun 2, and I chose Outrun Online Arcade because it's HUD. It had online multiplayer that was really good.
It was.
And also I saw, and this is what offended me the most. I saw, and I'm going to copy paste a screenshot of this in as I read it so you can read it along with me. I saw as I was researching this, the official Xbox magazine gave it a 55 out of 100 and said, even at $10, we won't be taking another ride with Outrun until Sega serves up some substantial new content. So what we're seeing here is an ancient usage of the word content.
Yeah.
We're seeing someone say $10 is too much money to spend for a beautiful, loving, full recreation of Outrun 2.
I would say my favorite racing game.
Blistering 60 FPS.
Yeah.
Ferraris in there. Whoever wrote this review now is either dead in a ditch, a skeleton in a ditch, most likely, because no one wanted to touch them after they died because they look like the sort of person who'd give a 55 to what represents to me one of the most generous god-darn offerings in the history of the interactive electronic video game medium. $10 for Outrun. With online multiplayer on Xbox Live.
Yeah.
Enough to make the Pope weep.
It really shows you what people thought of remakes at that time. Because like nowadays you get your nice generous remake and people are like, I loved this and now I love it again some more. But you couldn't do that back then.
Jeffy, I know you saw Ferrari. Did you? We don't need to say what part of the movie, but did you not snap your fingers and point at the screen and go Outrun?
Yeah.
At that one part.
Oh, you bet I did.
Any Ferrari viewers in the audience, you know what part we're talking about. Oh, yeah. You know what part.
Okay, so I'm not I don't think we should necessarily name the person, but this review is only in the physical magazine.
Okay,
which,
okay.
I'm looking at the shelf right now, so I'm going to go grab it. We're going to
get it. I want to know who wrote this. You're going to be blacklisted. Whoever wrote this, you're done.
Insert credit.
You'll never eat lunch in video game critic town again. Because I saw that review and just seeing the word content and complaining about the $10 and the 55 and it being the official Xbox magazine for this version of the game that was only released in North America on Xbox. It just kind of Saturn devouring his own young here. To reference the movie Ferrari again. I really, really liked that movie Ferrari. I got to watch it again.
Good.
I'm going to watch it again. But it's just seeing that and just being like, man, it was $10, dude.
Yeah.
It was one of the best values of all time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I loved the PS2 one. I loved the Xbox one. It's confusing that they all have different titles. But they are all also different games, right?
They're certainly
quite
at the
different.
very least versions of each other.
Yeah, but they're different. The Special Tours doesn't have a review. Did you know that Outrun 2 for PC for Windows is abandonware, and you can get it, and there's a community that keeps it up. And you can have yourself a good time with it if you want to check that out.
That's good stuff. Yeah, this is one of those games that I was hoping someone else would bring up, and it happened. So I had the exact same thing written here on Outrun 2 or Arcade, and I was going to decide based on how things were going. But Arcade is the right answer.
I'm going with the Outrun Online Arcade because it was because of the $10. It was the first well, okay, maybe not the first instance of a downloadable online Xbox Live Arcade game that actually made me like as excited as like a new Final Fantasy or whatever. I was like, yeah, dude.
I think real game wise, it might have been for me because like when I say real game in quotes, not an indie game, not an XBLA feeling game, but like a game you would pay for.
And it was so cruftless too. You open it and there it is.
Yeah,
you know, it's just there. It is. It's open. You want to play? Go ahead.
Outrun Online Arcade is one of those games I love so much that I wouldn't even be hurt if you wanted to put it in number one.
Yeah, I have a question though. So I'm reading this person's review, the full thing. Yeah. Under the title of the game, they have like a snippy little whatever, right?
Yeah.
Someone explain this because I don't understand. Outrun Online Arcade. Bill Murray, Punxsutawney Phil. It must be Groundhog Day. Are Bill Murray and Punxsutawney Phil in Outrun?
Is this person trying to say that Sega's releasing too many versions of Outrun because that didn't age well, given the fact that it's been removed? Or are they trying to say it's repetitious? It sure didn't age well because you can't buy it at all now.
I can read the full thing. It's 2 paragraphs.
Oh, let's hear it.
For it.
Let's do it.
I need to know.
Okay. We're all for retro classics being reissued for our modern enjoyment. But with the latest iteration of Outrun, which follows original Xbox releases of Outrun 2 and Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, Sega is asking for a third, italicized, time in recent memory. Online Arcade is essentially a carbon copy of Outrun 2006, though the venerable arcade classic has received a facelift for 360. So instead of looking like an 80s arcade game, it now resembles a 90s quarter muncher.
Come on. Come on.
Okay. The exact same scenes and modes are still here, so you can impress your girlfriend in heart attack mode while drifting your way through the Bay Area and listening to Magical Sound Shower. Despite its fun core, the nostalgia trip is running a bit thin on actual nostalgia, and our interest winked out faster than if someone had yanked the power cord. Even at $10, we won't be taking another ride with Outrun until Sega serves up some substantial new content.
Oh man, all the stuff about the graphics is
yeah.
I'm gonna need a scan of that.
Garbage water,
Frank.
Will a photo?
I'm gonna frame it and put it. I'm gonna frame it and put it on my wall. It's that's one of the most egregious all-time examples of looks like an N64 game.
Yeah, that's an incorrectitude.
Yeah, that I've ever seen. I mean, I don't want to. This is welcome back to the Outrun show here. Like, I don't want to harp on this too much more, but Outrun 2006 for your PlayStation 2, or if I'm getting my versions right. Am I getting my versions right here? The other ones weren't for an HDMI enabled video game console that you could plug into your TV with an HDMI cable and have going at 720p widescreen. I mean, just that's a big difference for me. I don't know, man.
Where do we put it?
So on the same page was Wheelman, which got a 5.0. This got a 5.5. So they put it above Wheelman.
So it's better than Wheelman.
Yeah.
So we can't put it last.
Punxsutawney Phil? It must be Groundhog Day. I mean,
I'm gonna say this on the record about this guy. Who we're not gonna say his name, but here when Frank showed me who it was on Twitter, here's what I saw. You want to check that out?
Nice.
Oh, weird.
I had already blocked him on Twitter.
Nice. Oh, that's a well-curated feed.
We could put it at number 1.
Yeah, I'd say just throw it on number 1 because of all this.
And we'll begin round 4.
All right.
Okay, it's me, right?
That's you.
Okay, it's getting harder to choose. I got so many things here, but I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Have you guys heard the good news about a little game called Bujingai? Love that Bujingai.
I recently played a whole bunch of Bujingai. It's okay. I don't know. It's fine.
It deserves its 72.
Yeah.
I would say, but it's very smooth. And it does have a bit of a had to be there-ishness to it as well, because the wall running, the kind of expansiveness of the world and the way it feels like it's bigger than it is, and that there's stuff around the corner that you can't see, not just literally, but kind of conceptually in terms of how the mechanics work is quite neat to me. And okay, well, if we're not that excited about Bajinga, I could choose something else too.
No, well, let's do Bajinga, the game that Boomtown called thrillingly tedious.
I got so many games.
I've got some PS2 action games. I mean, a huge number of these games on my list are just PlayStation 2 action games. So Bujingai not one of them because I figured also, you'd put it on there.
I think another thing about Bujingai is that there just aren't that many games in the wuxia genre, period, in the world that are. It's like a game made by a Japanese company that is referencing Chinese
Brandon's
mythology.
Clearly owning the fact that he's never played Shacho Ayuden for the Sony PlayStation 1 here. It's the most wuxia game ever made.
I was going to ask if you played Sifu.
But there aren't very many. And there are a few more being made now in the land of China, which is cool. But there's a dearth of them, and I think Bujingai is a good representative. I like it.
Bujingai's all right. I feel like Bujingai is kind of like
it's got Gakt in it.
It's got Kamui Gakuto. Yeah, that's his full name. In case anybody listening didn't know that, I feel like Bujingai is kind of like it's like a less mechanically interesting Shinobi. Shinobi 2002 for PS2.
I agree with that. But as we've established, I like a mechanical middle ground.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting enough to have stuff that I got to do, but not so interesting that I'm bad at it. And not so boring that it's too smooth.
I mean, I feel like Sega's Shinobi 2002, which got a 71 on Metacritic, is a pretty good game for this list as well. But I'm not going to use that one because
you can't break a bunch of neon signs in the Kowloon Walled City in that one. That's my main complaint about Shinobi.
Yeah, but you can't really break a whole lot of neon signs in the Kowloon Walled City of Bujingai unless you
go off the rails.
Play it a bit.
Yeah.
Unless you play it a bit, no, Bujingai's cool, whatever.
Where would you put it on the list, Brandon?
Let's see. Let me take a look at this listo. I guess I'd put it I'd probably put it on this list below Ridge Racer 6.
Yeah, I think it would have to be down there, yeah. It'd have to be down there.
Would you put it below Flipnik?
I just I follow Gakt on Instagram.
God, I've chosen 4 now. I only have 3 left. Too late now.
I follow Gakt on Instagram, and it just kind of makes me like Bujingai a little bit less every time he posts.
Yeah, well, I think I intentionally don't follow.
He's 60 years old now, which is cool. He's a good looking 60-year-old. Good for him. He's in good shape, takes care of himself.
I thought he was born in 1542 or something.
Yeah, he's a vampire. Yeah, he's like that was his
shtick.
Frank,
his shtick. Kamui Gakuto.
Oh, is it my turn?
It's your turn.
It's Frank's turn.
Oh, all right. I mean, I'm just going to do the one that Tim handed to me.
Oh!
I would have gotten to, I think, because it actually was scored lower than where I stopped. Coming in at, I believe, 63 it was.
Mm-hmm.
Insert credit all-timer, Raw Danger.
Raw Danger.
Danger.
Zettai, Zetsume, Toshi 2.
This is the Christmas game. This is the only Christmas game.
It's the diehard of video games.
It is absolutely the diehard of video games. Similar to Tulip, it's like, I don't even know what to call this genre. Like walking around and dealing with problems genre.
Survival adventure, I would call it.
Yeah, I mean, there's survival, but it's almost like the social aspects of it like take center stage for me.
Yeah, I couch that under the adventure umbrella, but a social survival adventure.
Something that I think we all like here is contemporary settings and cities and walking around. And so there's a whole lot of that in here, even though it's all in a bad state for the most part. One of the best openings, I think, of any game ever. Is the opening act. Oh yeah, of Raw Danger, and being a waiter and your tutorial is doing your job, and genuinely funny. The relationship in whatever chapter it is where you're the cab driver between you and the journalist is and this is a non-romantic relationship, by the way, between a man and a woman, which shock, you can have those. Is maybe one of my favorite, relationships in a game, because it's just very funny the way that they interact with each other, and genuinely good game. Something that I play on Christmas once every 2 or 3 years at this point.
It's also really punching above its weight in terms of the number of people that worked on it versus the scope of the idea.
It's many of the same 13 people that worked on Bumpy Trot at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm. It's a real Mario and Zelda at the same time situation, but in the PS2 era.
I think this is my favorite Metacritic page in the sheer dichotomy between the people who really get it and the people who really don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was marveling at the Raw Danger Metacritic page. Marveling at it, Charles. They were calling me Marvelous Charles.
They were. I heard.
Yeah, you could hear them. So first of all, Raw Danger in America had really weird box art.
Mm-hmm.
And it did a rebranding thing where they made everybody's hair blonde. So it's a really interesting localization situation, which is a thing that contributed to a lot of its problems, the perception problems in the West. It was maligned for having a lot of weird little choices made in it. It's a weird little game that tried really, really hard, was made by a small group of people with a very clear goal of just making something that felt. And so this is when I said earlier that I don't want to put any of the Yakuza games on here just to be like, or to put like a devil summoner or whatever and be like, oh, this is before the critics knew Shin Megami Tensei Persona was cool. This is cool because this did a bunch of stuff that a bunch of games that are popular now pick like one of to do.
Yeah, you could say Raw Danger is the midpoint between Yakuza and
that's right.
Resident Evil, I think.
There you go.
No.
Yakuza and what?
Not at all, Jaffe. You play Raw Danger multiple times. It is the midpoint between Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter.
There we go.
And,
yes!
And you got to play it at least twice to get the real final chapter, I believe.
You do, yeah. So it's the midpoint between Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter and well, technically,
welcome to the family.
Yeah.
And Disaster Report 4 is also under 80. So,
but I'm not going to nominate that.
No, I know.
We're saying
it never the tradition.
It never rehabilitated its critical. Raw Danger is absolutely one of the best games ever made.
Play the undub on PS2. Do not emulate it if you can help it, because the emulators cannot do the visual effects. This goes for Bumpy Trot as well, by the way. Can't do the sort of like the fog and stuff like that, so it just looks very wrong.
It looks very shimmery and weird.
The opening looks great, so if you just want to play the opening, by all means emulate it, but then get yourself a real PS2 to play the rest of it, and don't try the others until you've tried this one.
It's got one of the best opening 30-minute slices in terms of just the cinematic presentation of it.
Yeah, I guess this is the Yakuza 0 of the Disaster Report series, or the Zentai Zetsumetoshi series.
So where are we putting it? How far above Breath of Fire does it go?
I like it better than Bumpy Trot.
Yeah, I would say in terms of everything. So we're calling this and Bumpy Trot the Zelda and Mario. Bumpy Trot's the Zelda. Zentai Zetsumetoshi 2 Raw Danger involves there's a lot of plumbing in that game. There's a lot of pipes. There's a lot of a plumbing situation. So it's the Mario. Yeah, might as well. Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to necessarily get its due because it does have some technical frame rate problems.
It's got its due over here at least.
Yeah, it's got its due well enough in so much as it ever will. If you do want to play it, like Frank said, play it on your PS2. But I would recommend checking it out upscaled through a RetroTink 4K. It looks very nice. It looks about as nice as it can get. I enjoy that a lot. Thank you.
I want to be pretty clear too that it's specifically those two games by that same developer that emulation just has not cracked the visuals of. Most other PS2 games.
IRAM's too powerful.
Yeah. To be fair, the PlayStation 2 barely cracked with the ability to spin the disc. I guess it was a sticky disc.
Tim, bring us home. This is our last game before the break.
Before the break. Okay, so we did Raw Danger. It's hard for me. I'm looking at this list, and I've got a couple. It's real hard to kind of split. There's two of them. So Brandon did Bujingai, and that kind of killed Shinobi for me. But I have two other PS2 action games. I wasn't really super confident about putting Shinobi on there. Like I said, I got like 40-some games on here.
I feel like if you're looking at God Hand and thinking about putting it on, you might as well do it.
Yeah, well, no, I am. But then there's another game that I would also put on.
I see.
God Hand is a it's old hat at this point. I feel like it gets talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And
we've been through this though. I mean, like that's kind of the point, apparently.
Yeah. It's like it's hard to avoid it at this juncture because it's all our favorite games on here.
Well, what I'm going to say is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a line. You can say God Hand if you want to, out there. If you kids out there want to play God Hand, you can get it on your PS2. You can get it on your PS4. You can download you can buy it legally. So the ease of access to God Hand makes it slightly lower in my list. I'm going to pick a game that I like, that not a whole lot of other people like, that is not nearly the same thing as God Hand, but it is also a morbidly, disgustingly focused action game. And it is by a developer who never did anything else like it. They did something kind of like it, but they're largely known for something else. And that is Spartan Total Warrior, published by Sega for the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and the GameCube. Has a 73 on Metacritic. It is one of the best action games, like pound for pound action games I've ever played. It has these big historical battles that are seen from this like Metal Gear Solid 1 style top-down perspective. And it has just really, really good, solid action in a way that kind of splits the difference perfectly between your pristine Japanese action games and any of a large cornucopia of Western action games that also feel good. It feels British, but not too British. Not too British, Charles. It's by Creative Assembly, makers of the Total War games. They made an action game which confused everyone, and they debuted it at the same E3 where they debuted, where Sony debuted God of War 1.
Right.
There were two big budget action video games about a Spartan warrior debuted at the same E3, and God of War.
Bad news for one of those games.
God of War just got identified as the one.
Yeah.
This is the game about, and it's like, first of all, I don't even really think of Kratos as a Spartan. I just think of him as Kratos, right? Whereas within seconds of booting up Spartan Total Warrior, you're looking at Leonidas, and they're showing you these historical battles where there's a bunch of little things to do on the battlefield. There's a shield. Your guy has a shield and a sword. You can change the sword out for a spear. You can block. You can do a shield bash at the right time to parry people's attacks. You can kick dudes while holding the shield out. You can kick people's shields to knock them back. There's just a whole bunch of little things in there, and it manages to just have some of the best pound for pound action encounters of any video game I've ever played. And every time I go back to it, and it is another one you can't really emulate very well, but check it out on your modded retro consoles. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I unfortunately never played it because the aesthetic did not appeal to me and continues to not appeal to me. And that's I've heard you talk about it, and it definitely sounds intriguing. But then I look at
it's tasty as heck.
As someone who went to USC, I look at like a guy with a brush on his head on the cover of a thing, and I'm like, it feels like I have to go to a football game. Which is not, it's nobody's fault. It's just I something about it made me never want to put the disc in.
Yeah, it's a good one, is all I can say. I mean, where I would rank it doesn't matter, Jerry.
The collective you is what I was implying.
Yeah, Tim being the only person that played it makes it a little. He should take this first stab. You didn't play it, right, Frank?
Right. So it's below Flipnick.
Yeah,
I would not put it below Flipnick. No offense to Flipnick.
That's your opinion.
Just take a look in the host only chat. Look at that guy at the bottom. Do you think he would put it below Flipnick?
We can't keep alluding to this.
We can say that we're looking at the guy who wrote the Xbox review of.
Oh no, we gave up their gender.
Outrun Online Arcade. Yeah, we gave up the gender of a person who wrote a review in
official Xbox magazine.
Official Xbox magazine.
Yeah. That would have been tough to guess.
Shocking.
I'm pretty sure he would put it at the bottom of this list. So. Yeah. I mean, I would need it to be above Bujin Guy because
you want to put it right above Bujin Guy. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess, because it is a phenomenally good action game, and I'm putting that on there instead of God Hand. So
that's this year's God Hand.
Yeah, I've chosen it instead of God Hand. Is God Hand a better game? Probably. It also has a 73 on Metacritic for anybody keeping score. So
maybe next year, God Hand. But for now, we'll be right back after a quick break. The following ad supports the Insert Credit podcast, but is not necessarily endorsed by its individual members. This is the Insert Credit Quick Break. I'm Alex Jaffe, and this Insert Credit Annual is sponsored by Dorks, a frenetic arcade-style action game by Corey, one of our most beloved dirtbags, and original music by Insert Credit Forum's moderator, Antilles. Slay the Dorks with your hot knife and butter your popcorn with their bodies while building combos, braving the heat, and discovering the surprising answer to the eternal question, does butter have ghosts? You can play Dorks now at kbones.itch.io/dorks. But if you'll be in the Washington metropolitan area between January 18th and the 21st, you can play Dorks live at MagFest or an Insert Credit meetup. Come meet some fellow Insert Credit fans, play a cool game, and speculate on the nature of my relationship with Frank Cifaldi. And if you would like to sponsor an episode of Insert Credit with an advertisement or personal message, you could always reach out to me at show@insertcredit.com. Now back to the rankings. Welcome back to our Insert Credit Annual. Tim, before we started the next round, you had some more things to say about God Hand?
I wanted to say a little bit more about God Hand, because God Hand is, in my opinion, maybe the best video game that has under 80 on Metacritic. If you put a gun to my head and told me to pick what's the best game with an under 80 on Metacritic, I would say number one is God Hand, but it's all because as a gamer and as a person who once worked with Shinji Mikami on a video game, and heard firsthand his tales of woe about the much ballyhooed IGN 3 out of 10. As such a guy, I would have to give it to God Hand philosophically, spiritually. But the reason I wouldn't put it on this list at all is because it has been so rehabilitated in the eyes of the gamers. Every user review from the most recent several years is a 10 out of 10.
Our work is done.
And it is at a point where God Hand is the one example of, we can sit and we can joke about the Outrun Online Arcade 55 out of 100 from Official Xbox Magazine. We can joke about some of the other critical blurbs of some of these other games. But we can also kind of see where they're coming from, and we can frame ourselves in a historical perspective. More often than not, I would like to think us all capable at least of that. However, in the case of God Hand, I think it's safe to just declare a vote of no confidence in the Metacritic system for giving this game under an 80. I would say, I know it's got some goofy, stupid humor, and it's kind of too hard sometimes, but it rules so much that in a post Dark Souls world, I think we owe God Hand a 100 out of 100 on Metacritic. They need to amend the score. I once told Casey Lynch, who was editor-in-chief of IGN.com at the time, let me re-review God Hand. I told him. And I said, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I said I wanted to give it a 10 out of 10, and he was like, no, that's too much. And I was like, give it a 7 out of 10, but I'll also make fun of the 3 out of 10. So you can't make fun of the 3 out of 10. And I'm like, well, I want to make fun of it. And he's like, you give it a 6 out of 10. And I'm like, no. And then he's like, oh, and then, suddenly out of nowhere, it's, we don't update our reviews. So in other words, I tried to tamper in the Metacritic score of God Hand, is what I'm saying. I actively tried to, and that's why I must recuse myself from voting for it, among the other reasons I just listed. And that's the end of my stuff about God Hand. Meanwhile, Spartan Total Warrior, nobody cares about. Let's all care about it, everybody.
That's what we're doing this year. Brandon, you've got our next game for round 5.
Oh, it's getting tough now. I got 3 left. Boy. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and choose a game that I like a lot, that I think it works here, because if people were to revisit it, it could have gone the same route as Katamari, and it didn't for some reason, and that's interesting to think about. And that game is Ribbit King. Ribbit King has a 60.
Wow.
Yeah, Ribbit King is a colorful fantasy sports game where you hit a frog with a golf club, and then the frog jumps and then the frog does whatever actions are in front of it. Like if there's a fly, it'll jump and get the fly. If there's water, it'll swim across. So it's kind of you're setting up you're trying to aim for a series of actions that create combos that move you further along, get you points, ultimately trying to get into the hole. And it's a very fantastical, multi-tiered environment. Fun, I dare call them levels rather than courses. And it's got funny humor that people hated. They thought it was really not funny at the time. But this is a game I truly don't understand why people didn't like it. Because to me, it was like just really fun and cute and funny.
Well, I feel like the premise alone is like an automatic 60. You know what I mean? Like, and so like
Frog Golf, Frolf.
Right. Like, it's like, okay, bare minimum. Like, as long as it doesn't break, it's at least 60. So the fact that it's not higher than that is kind of bewildering to me.
Yeah, it's a really odd one, and I feel like it deserves a revisit. It deserves its due because there was one game on the PlayStation 1, and then this one came out on PS2 and GameCube, and then that was it. It never came back. But it deserves to because it's an absolute delight, and the multiplayer is also fun because you get to see what your buddy is trying to go for and what the dumb little frog will do. There's different types of frogs. Have a conversation with a basket. I don't know. It's like why don't
too
people
many
like
types of frogs, in my opinion.
Yeah, but there are too many types of frogs.
Have you considered what GamerDude05 thought of it though? This game, 4 asterisks on GameCube. First thing, there were Wii graphics. Second, this game is very hard. Third, this game is 64 euros. I got mine for 10 euros at CEX. Fourth, I'm never playing this game anymore. 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Hard to argue with that.
That's my nomination for title is I'm never playing this game anymore. That's the name of this episode.
Yeah.
All the other user reviews are quite positive. Why would anyone hate Frolf?
Why indeed?
It's what somebody says in another review. That's not a quote from me.
So the PS2 version came with a DVD of like more of the funny little interstitial bits.
Oh, that's worth another 10 right there.
Yeah, like
bare minimum 70 as long as it doesn't like crash at startup.
So I feel like, I can't remember, but I feel like it must have come out before Katamari. And if it had come out after, people would have been looking for that next thing to champion, maybe?
Yeah, it could have been. Well, no, it came out before Katamari, yeah. It would have come out before Katamari.
So is Katamari the video game equivalent of when we switched from Japanimation to anime?
I think so. It's like when
analogy, yeah.
When we stopped thinking of Japan as like, whoa, wacky. Oh, okay, some people still do, but when we stopped thinking
I'm pretty sure that Katamari got pretty wacky to.
Well, I think it went from wacky to wistful or something. Right. It was like a step.
It straddled that line. It Katamari rolled right over that line.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Well, it was a gateway because you got it because of whoa wacky, and then you played it, and it's like, oh, this is great,
good.
Yeah. So I feel bad for Ribbit King. It deserved better than it got, and so I'm putting it on the old list. 60 is not enough, but where?
Rib K.
So I would probably put it above. I would put it above Tulip because it's more fun to play.
Yeah,
but that's maybe too high for other people.
Not as interesting. So it's a good versus interesting debate now.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting, but it's not that interesting. It's just like two ideas smashed together. So
what's interesting about it is that it didn't do better. I don't think it's that great.
Yeah, I guess Tulip also has that. So, what do you all think? If you want to put it below Tulip, that's also okay.
I mean, I'm in that same ballpark now that I'm looking at 7 through 10. It's roughly Tulip, so I'm good either way. So Tim,
I'm surprised you want to put it above EDF, Brandon.
Well, EDF is like my happy to be involved kind of game. I mean, so is Bajengai, but EDF I feel like truly is. It didn't need to be reassessed. It is a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
I kind of love that it's on 7 on the list right now.
That's true.
EDF is also I'm at this point in my life well old enough to say it's better to talk about stuff people don't talk about as much.
Sure.
Whereas maybe in your 20s, you can pitch that as more contrarian or or pretentiously. At this point in my life, I believe I personally can get away with not sounding contrarian by saying, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like I can get away with saying, this is just more interesting. Who cares about the thing people talk about more?
I can't get away with it because people are accusing me of it constantly. So it's apparently my personality. So
yeah. So I mean, I'm willing to say that Earth Defense Force is. There was a time when I was a guy talking about Earth Defense Force, right? There was a time when I was one of the few people talking about it. And now it's like the work is done. Whereas maybe with Ribbit King, the work never got even started.
Right.
I hear that argument for putting it above there. So right below Tulip?
Yeah, I'd put it under Tulip.
That's fine.
That sounds good. Frank?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, is it my turn? Dang it. Okay.
It is.
All right. We're just doing the obvious ones. So gotta have two that are kind of similar, as Brandon knows.
Yeah. Do them.
God, I guess.
It's good, though.
Let's talk about Deadly Premonition again.
Dead Prem.
Dead Prem.
So this is a game that I found really interesting when it came out. I did kind of revisit it recently, and it's still got some interesting ideas, but I don't know that I would necessarily say it's a must play anymore. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is that supplanted it, but I feel like video games have evened out now, where like some of the new ideas that were introduced here are not that shocking anymore. But I mean, if Dragon Quarter's on here, right? Like we can have this on here for similar reasons.
I mean, I would like to say Dragon Quarter is an impeccably made video game, though. Let's not make any mistake. It is impeccably, purposefully. It is machine engineered. It is perfect.
Yeah, I think Frank's talking about the interestingness.
Yeah, the interestingness. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's all I'm talking about. Not.
I just want to stop
yet.
and I want to stop anyone in the listenership from perceiving Frank's sentence. If we can have Breath of Fire on here as equating these games more than out of the interestingness aspect. Thank you.
Yeah. So Deadly Premonition is another one where I think it's wacky with the gateway. So it's kind of similar to Ribbit King as well. But it actually is kind of an interesting interactive murder mystery where it kind of feels like everyone in the small town is on their own timer that sort of resets itself through flags that happen. So it has that sort of idyllic adventure game thing that we all want in the back of our heads, which is a small enough town where everybody, right?
Yeah, and the town is doing its own thing by itself without you.
I think it was like Warren Spector in like 2000 or something in an interview that said he wanted a
RPG.
Exactly, right? Like this is basically a one block RPG. And it succeeds in a lot of areas. It's really janky in others, but I think the jankiness, being entertained by the jankiness is probably what kept me playing, to be honest, because I was amused by the jankiness and also somewhat invested in the story, and somehow the two of those things combine into a great experience. Yeah. I think there's a ton of heart to this game, to all the characters. Swery, friend of the show. I don't even know if he knows what the show is, but friend of the show, Swery.
Donkey Milk.
Donkey Milk.
I think it's very much a sweary game. Like you could play his other games, but this is his best one. Yeah. And I think it's worth, I don't know. I'm trying to come around to is it worth revisiting now? It's just so hard to say because I was just so impressed by it in its time. But I think there's a lot of good characterization that games lack. There's a lot of Twin Peaks here, but it is kind of a good video game take on Twin Peaks's feel, and cool little PS2 game that's on the 360.
Another thing I would add is this game rightfully, I would say, gave Swery his reputation because it's really well thought. He thought about it a lot. Yeah. And most of his thoughts are in the game. And it's a game where, because he liked old weird movies, he had these vocal sequences where the main character is talking about movies that he saw and liked, and they're actual real movies from the real human world. The map is shaped like a dog that is an important character in there. It has all these internal references to a universe that he'd been building in his head. And when he talked about how he created the world, it was like first he made the map, and then he figured out what the town was like and where people would go, and then he figured out what kinds of people would populate that place. And so he started from the big and then worked down to the granular, and that made a different kind of experience than some others where you come up with the characters first and then you figure out what those characters might want to do. And so it does have a lot of problems for sure, and it's technically very subpar, but it was a legitimate stab at an auteur project that did resonate, and I think that's why it resonated with some people. And also, I've said this before, but about the action sequences, which indeed are not that fun for a while, but they're kind of compelling in a weird, messed up way. Mm-hmm. They get more compelling once you get the Weed Eater, the Weed Whacker, and you can just run through all the enemies and speed run it while following all the little agent shields that you pick up. Then it actually becomes really fun to go through a dungeon as quickly as possible, collecting all the items and getting to the exit. If it had been like that, I don't think the game really would have worked, but it would have been a little more fun.
Where would you put it?
Let me look. I also want to say that it does remind me a lot of Raw Danger, and I think maybe the similarity is in the bit off more than they could chew, but it works anyway kind of aspect of it.
Which I would say about Nier.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, Deadly Premonition was canceled 7 times. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think I like it better than Tulip.
Oh.
Yeah, I probably do too.
I think it's more playable than Tulip. Like they're
more
both
playable than Tulip.
Similarly interesting, and I think Deadly Premonition is more playable.
Yeah, Deadly Premonition is a little emptier maybe than Tulip. Tulip feels a little more rich to me somehow. But
it's a smaller town.
That's really
smaller town.
Yeah.
That's right.
Smaller town, and it's got them graphics.
Yeah.
We're just gonna go ahead and put it there.
Tim, do you want to assess? I mean, I know you're not as.
There's a thing about this
because this was reassessed in its time, so like it was reassessed immediately.
It was kind of a budget release, right? Wasn't it a budget?
It was $20.
It was a budget release.
Yeah, it was a budget release.
I credit myself, and this is true, as writing the first positive review of this game. I came out of video game review retirement because I was so frustrated by people not getting this game.
So you, in other words, you kind of you manipulated the Metacritic score.
I manipulated,
but not enough.
I wrote a positive review, but it was on oneup.com, which has an A through F rankings system, and the Metacritic score. I know I've talked about this on the show before, but I'm going to do it again. The Metacritic score for Deadly Premonition from oneup.com, whatever it is, I don't remember, is below what I would give it if giving it a numerical score.
The 1UP review is a 75 for Deadly Premonition.
Oh, wow.
Oh, is that
Deadly
true?
Premonition is by no means a great game, at least in the traditional sense, but I'll be darned if I didn't enjoy every minute of my nearly 42 hours playing it. The setting and story might have a little too much in common with the early 1990s television series Twin Peaks, but the homage is done with love and admiration. Frank Cifaldi, oneup.com.
75.
75. I actually thought it was lower. I don't know. I would have given it a probably. I don't know. It's like revisiting it now. That's a pretty good score. So
wow, and it's like Games TM is an 80. While you will unquestionably be embarrassed by the low budget visuals and wish the combat mechanics they're going from English to Australian. Were tighter, you'll also experience some incredible moments that can't be found in any other video game. There you go. Not really sure I agree with that.
Well, I think it might have been true at that
time. I wasn't
time.
Unquestionably embarrassed by the low budget visuals.
No.
So in my opinion, again, this list is just tricky by nature. So it's like whatever.
I'm not sure it should be above Tulip though somehow.
Yeah, I think Tulip is at least. I don't think Deadly Premonition is very good. No offense to anybody who likes it. It's cool. Whatever.
Okay, so we put it below Tulip or above Tulip?
I don't know. Who cares?
Brandon?
Yeah, there's something in my brain that says Tulip should be higher.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so we'll switch around Tulip and Dead Prem. No problem.
They should have called it Predatory Demolition, and then I'd have been more excited to play it, to be honest.
Well, Tim, now is your chance.
What number was that? How many do I have left?
It was 5.
You have 2 left.
2 more. Dang.
You've got 2 left.
All right, Tim?
So, man, I got a bunch of hot ones in here.
Yeah, it gets harder the further down the list you get.
Yeah, so it's in order to games I like, right? We were talking about this earlier. I feel like Metacritic, and just talking about Metacritic and talking about things that got less than 80 on Metacritic, and just knowing how fraught that conversation is these days. Whenever there's a game that's coming out, if you ever sail the seas of Twitter and such, and you see like what the people with the Kratos avatars and the people with the Master Chief avatars and the people with the Horizon Zero Dawn Girl avatars and the people with the Spider-Man avatars and the people with the Ratchet and Clank avatars and the people with the Marcus Phoenix avatars are saying. Don't look at what the people with the Sonic the Hedgehog avatars are saying. You look at what they're saying. It's always like Spider-Man 2 is out now for PlayStation 5. And then there's a guy with a Master Chief avatar, which is like 82 on Metacritic or whatever, right? And it's like, first of all, what? Is that true? Is he making a prediction? Is he stating a fact? It's all just very tricky to think about. This is leading into my pick here, by the way.
Sure. Letting you cook.
Yeah. And it's just such a thing people talk about. And one of the first instances ever where I said there was a game I was interested in or that I liked, and someone shouted a Metacritic score at me. Have you ever had this experience where you're maybe you all never worked for literally Kotaku.com, which is where one goes for a paycheck that requires having such opinions yelled at you. But I mentioned liking Lost Odyssey for the Xbox 360 and received an instant. I put it like at the top of my list of best games of 2008. I did a best games of 2008 list at one point, which I thought was funny because it was in 2018. And the very first reply I got was within like 40 seconds of the video going live. You can tell I'm looking at the webcams. Everyone's very excited by this story. Within 40 seconds of my video about the best games of 2008 going live, someone, a hater, clicked on the video, moused over the very end part, and then immediately wrote Lost Odyssey #1, right? And I was like, okay. And then he's like, the game has a 78 on Metacritic, and I immediately deleted his comment.
Oh man, Lost Odysseys, huh?
I remember that, and because of that story alone, I must put Lost Odyssey on this list.
I wondered whether you would go for Lost Odyssey or Blue Dragon.
Blue Dragon, which is
you were gonna.
Yeah, so Blue Dragon. I love both of those games. And, speaking of that era of games, and I mentioned earlier, I alluded to the hot and cold cycles on the Japanese role-playing game, as it were. As of this exact point in time, which is 4:08 p.m. on Thursday, December 28th, 2003, it's Eastern Time, I believe the stance on JRPG is they're good, but also you shouldn't define a game by what country it's from. But also an American person can make a JRPG if they want to. I think that's the current temperature in the JRPG discussion. In 2008, 15 years ago, by God, the conversation was very, very deep into the lol, these games suck. These games are dumb. These games are shallow. We just had a game called BioShock last year with all sorts of choices. And now you're just giving me this linear narrative. How is this? I remember Lost Odyssey having people say, this is a role-playing game? It's more like a movie, right? I recall that conversation being everywhere. I remember Blue Dragon being released and getting really low scores from people saying it was too easy. And then I remember Lost Odyssey just kind of pumping up the difficulty. I guess they pumped it up so that the Western critics wouldn't be as mean to it. And I guess it kind of worked because it didn't really work because Lost Odyssey has a lower Metacritic score than Blue Dragon I'm seeing here. And Blue Dragon's a 79, Lost Odyssey is a 78. I'm giving it to the lower score because it's my Final Fantasy 13. It's Hironobu Sakaguchi is back with his buddy Nobuo Uematsu. It's like the last great, fully realized Nobuo Uematsu score. He went straight to Takehiko Inoue, artist of Vagabond and Slam Dunk, for the character designs. Director of the Slam Dunk movie, Takehiko Inoue. He directed it, which is wild. He went to him for the character designs. Kiyoshi Shigematsu, a prize-winning author, wrote all sorts of world-building narratives, and they published a book. This is the exact sort of thing that appealed to me personally in the year 2008. And it is a Final Fantasy. It is a Super Nintendo Final Fantasy that has freed itself of the blinders of the ATB the pseudo real-time system and just kind of repeated the Final Fantasy X turn-based system. It's systematically nice. The design's good. The story's great. Has a couple of really good moments. Has compelling hooks. I think it's one of the best Final Fantasy games ever made, even if it's an unofficial Final Fantasy. And I think it can proudly stand in for my favorite series is Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest on this list. Thank you very much.
I wish it was on PC.
How about that rice paper box?
Love it. I actually, you remember, I bought in 2019. I bought another copy of Lost Odyssey just so I could put my American copy into the case. Because in Japan you can buy it for $5, and it's in just a beautiful, beautiful case.
Yeah.
With calligraphy, it's printed on calligraphy paper. All sorts of nice little touches to that game. They really went for. They tried to elevate. You know, there was a time. This time in games, people were trying to do stuff. There was the video games art argument was back for the fourth of what continued to be like 16 times, I guess.
And Microsoft was trying to sell the 360, which was another factor in this because Microsoft gave them
they gave them a ton of money,
significant portion of the money.
And we learned with this sort of kind of depressing finality, we learned that the people of Japan didn't really care about the creators of the games. They didn't flock to Sakaguchi. They didn't flock to the creator of Final Fantasy. They instead chose to nitpick Final Fantasy 13 when it eventually came out a year later.
I feel like people don't really know this, but in Japan, your average game fan does not really know the names of the creators particularly.
They're not in the discourse.
Like they know Kojima now,
well,
but they didn't know him for a very long time. And if you look at interviews in the right eras, you'll see all these dudes being like, I didn't know our game was popular at all until I went to E3. And 50 journalists were like, Mr. Kojima-san, can you please, whatever, like kind of walled off from that so that they wouldn't get big heads by the companies. And the internet wasn't the way that it is now. But, you know, like people like Swery, literally nobody knows who Swery is in Japan. Nobody has any
idea. Guy walks down the
is.
street, nobody attacks him.
No.
Yeah, it's incredible. Microsoft was real proud of themselves for signing Hironobu Sakaguchi to make 2 classic Super Nintendo style RPGs with Xbox 360 HD graphics with many of the developers of Final Fantasy. Nobuo Uematsu's back. They were all proud of themselves for this, and it didn't sell in Japan. It got a 78 on Metacritic in America because of people, I guess, like me. But I feel like it just kind of, it never became a thing.
You know what's, I would love to do something a little more in depth on this later. It's so specific. But I found out that Microsoft's tactics with the Xbox 360 did kind of work. Because if you look at the number of consoles sold for the Xbox 360 in Japan to then the Xbox One when they stopped trying, the precipitous fall. It's just like,
oh wow,
360 market in Japan was actually significant enough that it made sense to release games there. Like I'll do something in greater depth later, but I at some point got Media Create does a book that shares all the stats for like the last 10 years of retail game sales, which in Japan still makes up the majority. And there's some really interesting stuff in the Xbox zone there, which I'll dig into it later. I'm getting off topic. Let's rank Lost
I'm looking
Odyssey.
at these. Let me just close this out by reading GameSpy's blurb on Metacritic, which is a 50 out of 5 out of 10. Lost Odyssey is largely higher 70s and low 80s, right? Electronic Gaming Monthly called it a pleasant surprise, for example. But GameSpy says, we have immense respect for what Lost Odyssey tries to do, be a back-to-basics JRPG with modern technological trimmings on the 360. Unfortunately, it's less a celebration of what made older RPGs great and more a crude relic of their past. Which is a real, it's less a celebration of what made older RPGs great and more a crude relic of their past is a real interesting way to say it's really authentic.
I do see where they're coming from.
Yeah, I do.
It's a very subjective. It gets to the heart of the Metacritic thing.
It's a genuinely interesting way to say wow, this is an authentic, real classic JRPG. But I guess it's less a celebration of what made them great. In other words, he's not I don't know. It's not full of references. It doesn't have Cloud Strife and Sephiroth in it or like whatever. This is interesting. It's interesting to think about. I like that game a lot. I don't know. So whatever. Thank you.
Let's rank it.
Where is it relative to, say, Breath of Fire?
So these are two classic cases, a full console generation apart, of the valleys of the JRPG's estimation in the mainstream critical eye. So I think they belong together, but maybe not. Who cares? I don't know.
It's a hard one for me. I wouldn't.
I would put it below Breath of Fire 5.
Really?
I wouldn't personally rank it as high myself. I liked it, but
where do you want it?
I think I was sort of hoping for something newer out of it for some reason. Although it did have a lot of new things in it as well. It's just,
I think if you look at it,
I think I've said this before, but I didn't quite have the breathing room to play it at the time. I didn't have the amount of time that was required to appreciate it.
That was, I recall, an argument of a lot of like critics who reviewed it. They were like, "Oh, it's too much of a video game, and it's too slow, or whatever."
If you take the time to really luxuriate in the text flashback sequences, I think it's a really unique experience.
It is, but you have to put yourself in the space where you have the time to enjoy that, and I find that still unfortunately difficult. I need to take like a month off.
There's a thing where, we talk about this frequently on, sometimes, but people, the new stuff kind of isn't as cool as old stuff because there's more old stuff. It's more likely that the old stuff is better. Like it's, just barely 51% more likely at least. It's just as time passes, Lost Odyssey it's more interesting to me than a lot of games. There's more time has passed between Lost Odyssey and now than passed between Final Fantasy VI and Lost Odyssey, for example, right? So it's like I'm able to look at it and be like, if I had to play one JRPG, what would it be? And it's like, well, Lost Odyssey is a little higher on the list than some of the Super Nintendo ones. So I don't know what exactly that means.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list and I'm getting more confused than ever and feel like it could kind of go wherever.
Yeah.
Let's put it below Breath of Fire. What do you think?
Above Tulip? Could be fun. I mean, it's easier to play than Tulip.
That's true. It is
easier. It's easier to chill with than Tulip as well. Looks pretty nice on the Xbox Series X.
Right. Is there any kissing in it?
Yes.
Okay.
But not as like a dedicated button.
Oh, that's okay. Just I want to make sure that there's some kissing.
No, there's actually some really solid romance in Lost Odyssey.
Okay, good.
Oh man, there's
whose turn is it now? Is it mine?
Yeah, it's your turn. We're in round 6 of 7.
Dadgummit, now it's getting to be weird. Like, do I want to do obvious stuff or do I want to do stuff that might not have been expected? And that's hard because there's stuff I feel like deserves to be on lists of best games of all time, and there's stuff that I feel like should be more reassessed.
Yeah, I picked Lost Odyssey because it didn't seem like there was a traditional JRPG on here, so it was
Well, I could put something on here that's definitely not on here. I'll just go for it. I'm putting King of Fighters 13.
All right.
That's a 79. King of Fighters 13 is the last big budget HD 2D sprite-based video game, fighting game. It's a 79, which is kind of like 79 almost feels like cheating compared to the numbers that I've been pulling on these other games.
Yeah.
But King of Fighters 13 is mechanically neat, but visually incredibly neat. They did the models in 3D first, and then pixeled over them to get the animations. And because of the way they did it, you could have all kinds of colors and you could do custom colors and things. And it's a really neat, weird relic of a game where they were not sure how to take it into the next era visually. And this is representative of a direction that things could have gone, but definitely did not. But it's also mechanically very smooth. It does a good job of teaching you how to play. And it just... I feel like there has been some reassessment of it more recently because it started to show up at larger Evo side competitions and things like that. Relatively maligned at the time for, it was certainly no Street Fighter 4 in its world beating fighting games or backness.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's been revisited as a game that's both mechanically and visually interesting, and I just love how it looks. I think it's super neat to look at. So KOF 13, that's what I'm gonna choose, even though I had some on here that are just like, there's a lot more of our top PS2 games of all time list that are just waiting in the wings. But I feel like we don't have a fighting game. I think this is a good one to reassess.
Big sprites.
Yeah.
All right, where is it?
King of Fighters is definitely the most under 80 on Metacritic of all
Of all the major fighting game series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would you put it, Brandon?
Good question. I'd put it actually, I don't know if this is weird. I'd put it above Deadly Premonition. Then maybe that feels high to some people. I would do that because I think it's in the middle or perhaps the end of a slow reevaluation period where people are realizing that it was actually good, and for a game to still have or to have like a somewhat more vibrant community that long after release is interesting to me. So I guess I would put it number 8. I don't know.
I think number 8 sounds good. I think it's suspicious. I hate to besmirch the video gaming abilities of the mainstream video game critic, but I think it's suspicious for your typical mainstream enthusiast press person to review a fighting game at all.
That's true.
Because a lot of times they're publishing their reviews like when the game comes out, and those games, I think I didn't even look for any fighting games when I made my list, because I just don't think fighting games, a review of a fighting game is helpful to anyone. I don't think a review on IGN or OneUp.com or any of these, I just don't think that anyone who actually plays fighting games cares at all about what numerical score and such guy who played the game against the computer before release with people in the office, right? Yeah. Like, I mean,
which I think almost makes it good to have one of these. Because it exemplifies that.
Well, no, I'm saying that's why you wouldn't care about one that got a 90, because it's pandering to the I don't know. It's pandering to the people who are going to write reviews that are like, there's so much extra content.
Yeah, I think a 90 means it had a really good single player campaign.
And it's like that doesn't make it a fighting game, really. I mean, it does, sure. Whatever. Street Fighter 6, pretty good, right? And it does have a weird single player thing that's pretty good. But I don't know what I'm saying. Who cares?
Are we all good with number 8?
Who cares?
Good.
Put it on there.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, it's time for your penultimate selection.
Here we go.
Crush it, bro.
Here we go.
Mushroom Kingdom.
Here we come.
Again, not in the movie. Very disappointing. Okay, so my final two, I'm going to do one compilation and one remake. And I've got several of those on here because they're all below 80. So I'm going to just throw out all these compilations and what I like about them, and then we will somehow live figure out which one we're nominating here. Okay?
Okay. I like this idea.
I'm probably the only one doing a compilation here, right?
Yes. I intentionally avoided them.
I specifically avoided them,
Yeah.
Okay, great. Intellivision Lives on the PS2 and Xbox. I really like as a compilation. This is from a time where Intellivision was run by Keith. God, I forget his last name. But Keith, who worked on Intellivision games in their time and then loved them so much that he bought them all back and started a company called Intellivision and was almost single-handedly keeping that catalog alive for like 20 plus years.
Keith Robinson. That's
Keith Robinson. Thank you. Also,
is he dead?
Yes, he's dead.
Okay.
He is also the author of the comic strip that was adapted into the Sega Genesis game Normie's Beach Babe-O-Rama or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Normies. Sounds like it got over in 80 on Metacritic.
Oh.
Yep.
I really like
Kaboom.
this / his compilations because they are from the perspective of someone who was there. What he tended to focus on was things like every game has first of all, the unlisted credit is now there for like who made these games. But he also was very meticulous about making sure that everyone's faces was in there somewhere.
Oh, that's legit.
I kind of get the feeling that he was just like grabbing people's MySpace profiles or whatever and just slapping them in his game. But like it's real photos of the real people who made these games. I think we only know some of the credits because he put them in there because it's coming from people who actually worked on this stuff. The segmentation of the types of games is really interesting because, they do things like, well, we had these weird prototypes. Let's put the weird prototypes in here. Space was a big thing. This is the space section. He also did video interviews with a lot of people. They're, really cheaply done. And if you play on backwards compatibility, the sound goes out of sync really terribly now, but like they're in there and they're really great. So that's in Television Lives. That's why I like that. God, which of the two of mine? I'm going to go SNK 40th, nominate my own game.
Okay.
I worked on that too.
Yeah, Brandon and I worked on this together. I really wanted this to be a snapshot of what a company during its growing pains years, I guess. So this is a snapshot of what SNK was prior to the Neo Geo, and it is a collection of games that intentionally, on my part, are not necessarily selected for quality. They are selected for representing the breadth of what this developer put out in the 80s. So there are games that maybe are better that we didn't include so that we could include some really bizarre things like Fantasy and Munchmobile.
Gotta love Munchmobile.
No, you really don't. But it's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I don't like it at all. But
no, it's not a good game. But it's funny. It's a game about a car with eyeballs running from the cops and extending its arms out to the street to eat apples and then re-extending them back out to the street to throw the cores away. That's the game. That's interesting. That's strange. Another thing we did in this compilation that I really wanted to do, and I'm glad that I was able to, is in the sort of editorial sections, I talk about every game that's not in here also. So it is like kind of the complete documentary on what SNK was in interactive form. The final one I would maybe nominate would be the Double Dragon and Kunio-kan Retro Brawler Bundle, with a terrible name. And this is a collection of Double Dragon and whatever you call the Kunio games.
Kunio-kun.
Kunio-kun.
Downtown Netketsu Monogatari games.
Yeah, all those. What I really like about this compilation is that they went in and actually retranslated all of the games. So I think that even includes Downtown Netketsu, whatever the... Yeah, the River City Ransom, right? Like, I think they actually united them all for the first time as like one franchise with one character for American audiences anyway. I think it's actually like remarkable that they did that they did this to all of these games. And it's I don't believe they're ROM hacks. I think they're text overlays, but they're text overlays done within the screen real estate, meaning that it is pixel fonts placed correctly where they should be, which makes it significantly better than when Konami did this with Metal Gear 1 and 2, and they put in that awful PlayStation 2 font that was like a completely different resolution than the game. I hated that. So remarkable product for that reason. Between these three, what are we nominating? I like mine the best.
I want to nominate yours too.
SNK 40th is fine.
I think SNK 40th is good. I'm just glad you didn't. Clearly you wouldn't have mentioned the Mega Man Legacy Collection because those games are too beloved, obviously. Right, yeah. So you went with ones that are not as beloved. And I think with that having been the actual angle of the SNK 40th collection, it seems like that's the most appropriate one. It's
the most center-credity one for sure.
You chose games that were specifically felt like they were less than 80 on Metacritic.
I think that in terms of kind of reassessing games, there's another layer of reassessment that went on with SNK 40th, which is all of the developers that I got to talk to and the folks that I did the video and stuff with were so excited that anybody remembered them.
Oh, you're talking about Samurai Showdown, though. You didn't do any video stuff for 40th.
Oh, that's right. I did video for 40th, for Samurai Showdown. But the reason I'm putting it together is because the video that I shot for Samurai Showdown a lot of it was of their old offices where they made these games in that are in 40th. But I did talk to a lot of the developers and walk around Osaka with them, and that was my preview for what I would then go and film later.
Right, that makes sense.
But the fact that they were just so excited that someone cared and was talking to them and had things to say about this era at all, because basically none of them work in games anymore very much. Their career was reassessed.
You're right. And my main source from Japan was like the SNK fanboy that got hired in the 80s to do what was the proto equivalent of community management. So he kept a lot of stuff, and he did things like explain to me how this unreleased Lost game played so that we could tell people about that. And there's other cool stuff in there. Like we turned all of the rotary dial stuff into twin stick games so they're actually playable. I got an Osmo Wars board from Japan so that we could record the onboard audio that can't be emulated. So it is actually like playable the way it's supposed to be, unlike MAME. It's good stuff. Good stuff. I don't want to place my own game.
That makes sense. Brandon, where would you place this game?
Well, I also worked on it.
Well, Brandon, I'm making you do it.
Okay. I'll do it. I don't care.
Go for it.
I'm just always in the 6 or 7. Like everything I want to nominate, 6 or 7.
I would place my own game, but mine unfortunately got higher than an 80 on Metacritic.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Boom.
Just pointing that.
Oh yeah, I wanted to point out earlier that like all of my games are below 80. So yeah, take that, Tim. Actually, I think Mega Man scored higher. I would put it, Brandon. I think it's more interesting than King of Fighters, and I think it's kind of an SNK showdown there.
Sure.
Oh wait, both of my games that are on Metacritic are over 80. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. It's bleak but very fun. Is the top review. Hey, why not? That's the top review on Metacritic of mine. Bleak, but very fun.
Every Hyper Gunsport review is a straight 80, but none of them are for the same platform.
All of my user reviews are a 10, so that's fun.
So I'm putting it...
so you're putting it at right
below
above KOF?
Or above Tulip? Yeah, I guess below Tulip, yeah.
That sounds fine.
I like that too. All right, Tim, time for your second to last game.
Oh, you didn't trust me to understand the word penultimate.
I didn't want to do it twice.
Yeah, I know, because then it would sound repetitive and not penultimate at that point, because there's only one penultimate, Jerry. So I got a bunch in here, and I'm trying to figure out what my angle is. Let's take a look at the list.
Yeah, the angle's getting rough now.
I feel like we need some kind of an action game on here, like a shooter. We have Earth Defense Force, but that kind of doesn't really...
I got a couple of those here that are very, very, very relevant.
Gun games are just they're underrepresented on here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Which one are you going to put?
That's a good question, Carl. You got guns in your games, right?
Yeah.
It is popular to have guns in games and shoot stuff with them, right?
I would say that what's funny is most of my final ones that I have here that I haven't mentioned yet are games with guns.
Yeah.
Most of them.
I mean, I'm sure there's one that we've got that we probably both have here, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it really shouldn't be this one doesn't really belong to anybody, but I gave you Nier, so I guess I have to take Bullet Witch. Is that it? Is that the agreement?
Sure.
That seems fair.
Because it's got to be Bullet Witch has got to be on here.
We got to.
But it's like, so for me, it's splitting hairs here between Ghost in the Shell standalone complex.
Yeah.
For PlayStation 2, the latest critic review from Warcry is, this game is good, but could have been much better, 78. The top review, the latest critic review for Bullet Witch is a 77 from GameBrink, saying, overall, Bullet Witch is a bit short at 5 to 10 hours your first time through, but it is definitely worth a rental if it comes to your neck of the woods. What? Is this game is it traveling in like a stagecoach? Like what? There is so much mindless shooting and wandering in Bullet Witch, Game Informer says. Edge Magazine, meanwhile, says it's an enjoyably twisted and often satisfying piece of fantasy then, even though the reality of its more generic aspects poses a serious threat to its achievements. Okay. What's good about Bullet Witch?
I think it's all vibes for me.
Me
what's
too.
Good about Bullet Witch is just the vibes and the weirdness. There was this time in the 360 era, the 360 PS3 era, where you had a bunch of Japanese video games that were trying to figure out how to crack America.
Yeah.
And some of them weren't, but all of the parent companies were for sure trying to make that happen. And then you got Bullet Witch and Nier and all these games coming out basically at the same time and having a similar kind of like, let's try this kind of a thing. And Bullet Witch is just their trick was weird physics that you could destructible environments and stuff.
Weird, like really bad balloon animal-y physics.
Yeah.
Some of the physics are incredibly awful. They're really, really bad.
Like I've said before, I'd rather get killed by a tire that came from behind me from my own attack than play a lot of other games.
Meanwhile, in comparison, so for anyone listening who doesn't realize this, Bullet Witch and Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex are both by Cavia.
Yeah.
They're both by Cavia. They are both games that are made sort of with Western audiences in mind. But also not really with Western audiences in mind. And I'm reading through the critic reviews of both of these games, and I'm realizing a couple of things that have kind of darker things that have been beneath the surface of this entire list this whole time. And I think this is actually pretty fun. It's enlightening. It's illuminating to look at this. So I'm reading phrases in this Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. Computer and video games expertly produced with enough sheen in all the right places to make it worth your while. 71. I really wanted to enjoy this game. 70. Injects skillfully deployed melee combat. Like I'm seeing all these things, and I'm seeing someone say it gets by. Standalone Complex lives on its good looks and famous anime license only. As a game, it's so average in every other aspect that it's not even funny. May 2005. And it's like, when I look back at Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex in my head, and there are more similarities than differences between Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex and Bullet Witch than, just their developer alone. They're both 3D third-person shooters that make a lot of interesting virtuosic use of space. I think the use of space in Standalone Complex is marvelous. It has a really good melee combat. It has, instead of where Bullet Witch has like crazy physics and magic spells and quote unquote exploration, it has the big maps you have to explore kind of a lot. Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex has very vertical segments that have a really interesting architectural flow, and your character can do these really cool acrobatic wall jumps, and there's like the ability to hack other people's brains and control them. That kind of turns levels into little Metal Gear puzzles. But what I'm seeing when I read through these blurbs is, I think it's and again, this gets at the heart of Metacritic. I think it's a PR thing. A lot of these people are just saying this game is like an American game, but it's from Japan. Is what I'm seeing in a lot of this. It's like they're unwilling, like to say that Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex is so average in every other aspect aside from its famous anime license is mind-boggling. There is so much. If you look at where third-person shooters and first-person shooters were in the year 2005, if you look at Halo and you look at something like Devil May Cry and you see that this game is a really neat, very, very thoughtfully composed sort of midpoint between those two sorts of things. It's a bridge. It's really, really strange to see it just being called so average that it's not even funny. It's like there's so much interesting stuff all over this Standalone Complex. And I feel like, you know what? I'm going to give it to that instead of Bullet Witch.
Okay.
I'm going to give it to the Ghost in the Shell because I don't know. I'm just going to give it to the Ghost in the Shell because I feel like that's a game that I've liked for a long time, and I've always thought maybe I'm an idiot. But every single time I go back to it, every single time, I'm like, oh, it is really good. It was one of the first games I tested on my PS2 with my RetroTink 4K. And I was just like, you know what? I like this one.
Get Zach.
Where would you like to put it?
I don't care.
Brandon, as the other Cavia guy here, do you have an opinion?
Let's see.
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Should it be Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex or Bullet Witch? What do you think?
Oh,
I feel weird because Bullet Witch has a lower score, which is cool.
I think Bullet
Witch is a 55.
Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex is legitimately, it's in quotes better.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. It's like mathematically better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think between the two, it's the more misunderstood.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, yes, probably it's true. And I think Bullet Witch is incredibly insert credity. But
Bullet Witch has one really bad level, though.
It does.
Where Ghost in the Shell standalone complex has 0 even mediocre levels.
Yeah,
we
can keep it with the old Git sack.
Well, no, I mean, I still kind of
I know it's hard.
I still kind of like Bullet Witch.
Me too.
Again, that forest level is one of the worst
It's rough.
levels of the entire hardware generation.
Start doing that
forest level.
Start doing the tornado effect in the forest, and you'll kill not only everything in the area but also your 360.
It's a playthrough stopper.
5F, yes.
It's a playthrough stopper. You stop playing the game at that point. You're like, all right.
Yeah, I beat it once or twice.
I've beaten it 3 times because I'm a huge idiot.
Yeah.
All right, let's play Skit.
God, I don't know. Luckily, I don't have to make the choice.
Well, let's just put
It's not
this
my
game
turn.
wherever, and then we can make the choice at the end. Let's
Okay.
let's put a Cavia third person shooter at I don't know. It's better than Earth Defense Force, I would say.
Yeah, above
Yeah.
EDF.
Yeah, you have to say it's better than that. I think
Sure.
it's better than Deadly Premonition, but we can put it beneath King of Fighters.
Sure, put it at 10. That's fine.
Yeah, Cavia third person shooter.
I don't know, Frank. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
The stakes are low here, folks.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have low stakes.
We're now going into our final round of Insert
Final
Credit
round.
Annual.
One
number
could
5.
even call it the lightning round.
This is so difficult. So I'm choosing between a bunch of games with guns in them right now.
Yeah.
I considered some. Frank, I'll tell you one that I discarded, though I considered it.
I was going to list a whole bunch I discarded right before I list mine.
Let's definitely do that for the last one. Actually, I'll say all the ones that I chose. But Frank, this in particular will be interesting to you. Forged in Shadow Torch has a 66 on PS4.
FIST.
I missed that somehow.
Our game, well, that's because the first one that comes up, I think, is the 81 on PC.
Ah.
It's got 66 on PS4, 79 on Switch, 80 on PS5, 81 on PC. So I chose not to put it in there but I played it on PS4, so it felt like I could have made an argument for it.
Yeah,
anyway,
I didn't do that. Yeah.
Here are all the other games that I had going. R-Type Final got a 79. That was one of our best PS2 games.
We've got two IREMs on here by the same dudes, so I guess
don't need another one.
They're vindicated.
It's a good one. Metal Slug 3, 74. Though that's not the Neo Geo version, that's the ports, but all the ports have that.
Metal Slug is certainly one of the most sub 80 Metacritic games ever, in a nice way.
Lost Planet 2 has a 68.
I love Lost Planet 2.
Lost Planet 2
dude.
is so good.
Yeah, I had Lost Planet 2 on my little list here too, so that's a bingo there. Good work.
The Saboteur has a 73. That's actually I have a Western developed, very Xbox 360 open world ish video game about the French Revolution on here, which is not what people might expect.
Saboteur is neat.
Saboteur is neat. Summon Night Swordcraft Story, which is a GBA game that's about crafting and battling. That's super fun, very good. I didn't want to put any remasters on, so Doom 64 and Turok Remaster both have low scores, which is a surprise to me. 76 for Doom 64, 67 for Turok Remastered. Those were for me the games that made me realize I like games on the N64.
Oh yeah.
So that's that. As we talked about, I didn't put Yakuza 3 or 4 on here.
Those have been reassessed.
It's cheating. I declined to put Balan Wonderworld on here because I've talked about it enough, but everybody knows.
Also, you can't. It's not legal to praise a game made by a guy who's in jail. So
yeah, he's 12 jails deep.
It's not jail. He's not in jail. He's in prison.
Yeah. Some games that I'm still getting around to, but did not. So I didn't put them on here because I haven't played them yet. Yakuza Dead Souls, which I feel like would have been fair game if I liked it, because that has gotten no reappraisal.
You know what?
But I haven't played it yet.
Game's not. I don't like that. It's a minor work.
Killer 7, which believe it or not, I'm still getting around to, 74. And Crazy Taxi 3, which I have a strong suspicion is the best Crazy Taxi because it adds a jump button, which is ridiculous.
Crazy Taxi 3 is so legit, it's hilarious.
It also has a 69, which is nice.
Very cool.
But here's what I'm going to do. This is a weird choice. The last one that I haven't mentioned yet. I'm going to put in Wolfenstein: The New Order. That is a newer game.
It's a neat
that
one.
is on. That's 79, and the reason I'm putting a newer game is to kind of fill out our list with some stuff that's not that old. It just was. It's a PS4 Xbox game, but it's
a PC game, Charles.
It's a PC game, sure, but it's very of the 360 era in its sensibilities, and I think that's why it didn't get a higher score. But I think if someone did that exact game now, people would, like in the boomer shooter times, people would be a lot more excited about it. And it's like it's a game about shooting Nazis and little weird narrative elements that are clever but not too clever. The action is really solid, and it's one of those games you can just fire up and play through. And you feel good about it. You feel good about shooting those Nazis.
I think this is a real good opportunity to talk about Metacritic in general, because this game came out in May of 2014, which means it was in development. It was conceived after BioShock.
Yeah.
It was in development when BioShock Infinite and The Last of Us were released. And it was released after both of those games had been released, right? It was conceived after BioShock as a game that is not going to even try to be like BioShock. It was conceived after Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and it's like, we're not even going to try to be that either. We're going to be something different, something more straightforward and arcadey. And it happened to be in development at the time that The Last of Us was winning a world record number of Game of the Year awards, over 300 Game of the Year awards, according to the box art of the remaster for PS4. Over 300 Game of the Year awards, man. So by the time this Wolfenstein game came out, it was just not. It wasn't. It would have been gauche to give it higher than a 7.9 for the mainstream critic who is currently living in the world of the prestige video game for the first time.
And it's also the perfect example of what we were talking about earlier, where, like, say your bonus is tied to getting an 80, and you release this game that is, by all accounts, very good and reviewed very well, but you get a 79, and you're 1 point off of your bonus. And it's also like, this game is notable for reviving a completely dead as a doornail franchise. Like, Wolfenstein was gone and dead. And how do you make Wolfenstein in a world where Doom took over and Wolfenstein is boring? Like, you make it a totally different kind of thing, make it kind of arcadey, and it really, like, it's a super successful re-envisioning of an old franchise.
Your target audience at that time also probably has no idea what Wolfenstein is too, which is neat, because a lot of the people who would have been excited to play a new Wolfenstein game were probably busy doing their taxes or feeding their baby or whatever, right? So it was in a weird gray area. So it's also I just would like to say this game is a very, very, like, extremely polished, very good video game, straightforward, knows what it is, knows what it's doing, very fun to play, very effortless to play. It's a good, decent length. The action is good.
It's a really smooth FPS, which I don't like too much difficulty in an FPS myself, and you can crank the difficulty up if you want to, but I just want to pop off the Nazi heads in these things, and that's what you do. You just blast, and it's fun.
It's perfect, smooth action, beautiful action, delicious action, wonderful graphics, wonderful effects, and it is published by Bethesda. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who? Okay. Here's the punchline here. Bethesda's Skyrim has a 96. And Fallout 4 has an 87. Skyrim has, let's go back. First of all, Fallout 4, which came out after Wolfenstein, has an 87. Skyrim, which has a 96, came out before Wolfenstein. I think these are very interesting numbers to talk about with regard to what the mainstream critics look for.
Because one of those three games is super hyper polished.
Yeah. And the other two are kind of a big old bucket of chicken bones, but they're not regular chicken bones. They're not delightful chicken bones. They're Havoc Physics chicken bones. Okay, balloon animal chicken. They're balloon chicken bones. So it's just really weird. Fallout 4 getting an 87. Fallout 4 was actually kind of decent in some places. Did you play it, Brandon?
Yeah.
It's a stupid game that it got less than 96 because it wasn't as smart.
As we know from Frank, all these Fallouts were supplanted by New Vegas.
Right.
Yeah. Well, New Vegas kind of poisons the well a bit by being what is it? It has an 84 on Metacritic.
Does it really? New Vegas does?
Yeah, Fallout 3 is a 93. New Vegas is an 84.
I actually, now in retrospect, I'm surprised that's not a below 80 because it was super broken when it came out.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
That is a below 80 game, Fallout New Vegas. So
But
I almost feel like we should just force it on this list somewhere.
No, Wolfenstein is our New Vegas. That's what we're getting at.
We'll
right now.
reassess its score down.
We're putting a Bethesda game on here.
And it's that one.
So Wolfenstein
Wait, what does Starfield have?
and Friends. I feel like that's probably 82.
Okay, yeah, you've said that every single time. It's 83.
I can't stop it. Oh,
It's 83.
nice. I was pretty close.
So I saw on the Reddit that it is now overwhelmingly negative on Steam.
Really?
Starfield?
So this is a game that has been reassessed quickly.
Reassessed very fast. It was. We're going to probably talk about Starfield a lot during the Goaty conversation. But not for any like exciting reason. It is mostly negative on Steam. Not only that, it is 30% off less than 3 months from its release, which is a little weird. I feel like they don't usually go that deep on the first winter sale of a big AAA game, but that's getting even more into numbers than I, a mathematician, am comfortable with. I'm a mathematician like Frank is a scientist. So it's getting a little bit too much into Starfield is mostly negative now on Steam. Lord.
Yeah.
So in terms of placing this, it's compared to almost all of these games, this is a lot easier to play. And
yeah.
No Man's Sky is a 71.
Oh wow.
Anyway, sorry, just that's
so
interesting.
That makes me not sure what to do because this game is just like a game you could play through like a regular person. You don't have to think about it being.
This is certainly the one game that framing the Metacritic conversation is the most fun around this one.
Yeah, so I kind of want to put it higher up.
I pasted in the chat a little while ago when you were talking about Lost Planet. I don't know if you saw this, Brandon, but I posted
they have the declining.
The three Lost. It's interesting. Lost Planet 1, 79. Lost Planet 2, 68. Lost Planet 3, 58. It went down 10 points. 11 points and then 10 points. If Lost Planet 4 came out, it would get a 47, which is fun. It's like we just had three perfect, extremely great, somewhat slightly janky, but in a beautiful way, Xbox 360 action third-person shooters by literally Capcom, including some Resident Evil, the staff that went on to work on the Resident Evil remakes, the much critically beloved, and they just got 79, 68, 58. Interesting to have this conversation about Wolfenstein. So, it's showing what the expectations of a AAA game were. The well's been poisoned since at least 2013, I would say. But also Lost Planet 3 did kind of suck compared to Lost Planet 2.
Yeah, Lost Planet 2. Lost Planet 2 is like Dino Crisis 2 in that it's like, okay, now we're just going to shoot things. We're going to go nuts, and we're in the jungle instead of the ice.
I really liked that Lost Planet 1, dude.
No, they're both good.
Yeah,
Just
they're both
reasons.
good. Yeah, I liked both of those games.
We gotta place this game, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
No, I don't.
Who cares?
Well, not you, Frank.
Who cares?
Well, I want to put it. I feel like I want to put it higher because I think that's weird, and because it is a good Metacritic assessment. But I don't know how high I want to place it. Would it be awful to make it number 5? Is that too bizarre?
5 is that's too high. That's too high. I feel like
Seagull's too big. What about above Tulip?
number 7.
Yeah, number 7.
I could do it.
Might have done.
All right.
All right, Frank, it's time for your last game.
Okay, so I guess lightning round of other stuff on the list. I didn't love it, but I was surprised that Mirror's Edge was below 80.
That's surprising too.
Let's see.
I didn't love it either.
It feels like an 80 game.
I had Metroid Prime Pinball on here. I kind of like that game.
Oh, the game rules.
Yeah.
It's okay. We shouldn't have 2 pinball games on a list. Surely.
Exactly.
Flip Nick.
I actually had Star Fox Command on here for the DS. I like that Star Fox. I think it's a cool Star Fox. What else? Killer 7, Brandon mentioned already. I'm not doing that one. The one that was the closest, I think, to getting nominated, and I don't know why, I'm just doing this remake instead, is Electroplankton. I think that's the best sort of automata thing, or whatever you would call
neat game.
that. But I don't know if it's a game, you know?
It's a digital
I do kind of
product.
wish we had a handheld game on here, but
Too bad.
We technically do. Earth Defense Force.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, there you go.
My wishes came true from me.
I wrote down The Cave because I played it, and it was like, it's not a very good game, but it's like you could tell if they had more money, it would be a good game. I put Master of Illusion on here because I thought it was so weird that like Nintendo shipped a box of magic tricks for the DS. That's
legit.
so good. I put a PS2 budget game on here that I really like called City Crisis.
City Crisis.
Have you played this one? Either of you?
I don't think so.
I know City Crisis.
Go look up City Crisis, Brandon. I think you love City Crisis.
It sounds like I do.
It is a very like Dreamcasty arcade style rescue people in a helicopter game.
You got a City Crisis on your hands.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Yeah, I played.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, Frank. I've played City Crisis.
Thank you. And I had Jaws Unleashed on here because it was just ridiculous that the people who made Echo made a Jaws game where it's like your Echo,
That's
except you like shake people around, and it has the best opening puzzle maybe of any game ever.
Yeah.
So you are Jaws, the shark. You are locked up in the back of like a SeaWorld type theme park, like water park thing. Because occasionally they open a cage and let you out, and they're like, "Look at the shark," and then they get you back in the cage. There are, I guess, marine biologists. I don't know, people in lab coats, I think, who they swipe their magnetic card to open the cage, and so you go, "Okay, I have to swipe a card to open the cage and escape," but I'm a shark. I can't swipe a card. The solution to the puzzle is to bite one of those marine biologists and then swim over to the card reader and shake them in front of it. And that opens the cage.
That's really good.
That's really good.
That would work in real life.
It would work if it was a really, really magnetic card.
And a really smart shark.
But I said I want to do one remake, and the remake I'm going to do is Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap.
Ooh.
By the way, Frank, I just bought City Crisis for $9.95 on eBay while you were talking.
All right, yeah. Thank you.
79.
So, coming in at 79, Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. This is made by, what was Omar's company's name, or is? Do you remember, Brandon? Lizard Cube.
He's Lizard Cube? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lizard Cube.
This was done by Lizard Cube by Omar Cornut primarily. Omar is probably the biggest fan ever of Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, the Master System game.
And the Master System in general.
You'd have to be to remake that.
He has a Master System room in his house.
Yeah.
Dedicated to and Game Gear, let's be fair. In that he has the world's collection of Sega 8-bit stuff. Like that's
there's a few Korean games he's missing, but that's about it.
Right. But he has a better collection than anyone else. This is really meticulously
I've
remade.
actually got all of them on my Mister, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, where do you think they came from, Tim?
Yeah, he dumped them.
That was all Omar.
It's true.
Doesn't matter. I've got them now. They're mine now.
A couple of them were me. I did a couple of them.
You know what? I've never liked one. You
shouldn't. You shouldn't like any of the Korean stuff. It's mostly just MS exports. It doesn't matter.
What's interesting to me is that the lowest score for this game is a 70, which means the overwhelming majority of people who reviewed this
everyone
said
thought it was a 7 out of 10. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, perfect. So this is one of those remakes where
it has a real 7 out of 10 art style to it.
It does indeed.
It looks like an NFT. Like, no offense to it.
Well, they invented the style of NFT.
Yeah.
No, I actually think it looks better than that.
It's NFT core, in my opinion.
It's one of those games where you can switch between original graphics and remake. I think this might be the first time anyone did an HD graphics layer on top of an old game that was doing its own style. You know what I mean? Because normally at that time, especially, there was sort of this sense of like, well, this is what the game was supposed to look like, but those fools only had pixels, you know? And this one just did not take that approach at all. It was just like, let's have an artist do a sort of cover of this game, right? So I appreciate that. I appreciate that the original mode is better than the original. It runs at twice the frame rate, but is like, you know, meticulously, like timing wise, exactly the way it was. And also, I think Wonder Boy 3 is a pretty good game. It's one of them. I don't even know what you'd call that genre, which is a theme, I guess, for me in this episode. Is like, what do you call the genre of run and jump and there's a town and you open the map up, you know, whatever.
Well, you call it a Metroidvania if you want a certain type of person to threaten to kill you.
That's fair.
Basically.
It is an offshoot of that genre, whatever.
It is, yeah. It's
but it's not quite that. You know what I mean? I wouldn't put this in the same.
It's like an ancestor. It's a missing link.
It's an Uncle Vanya.
Okay,
something like that.
That's that. Anyone else want to talk about it before we place it?
I have one thing to share about Omar, which I placed in the chat here.
Okay.
After the Olympic torch went through Paris. I think it was Paris. I forget. Or maybe it was England actually. But he took it upon himself to run after them with a banana. And I asked him, why did you do that? And he said, I don't know. But there's a video of him running with a banana like he's holding the Olympic torch. He just happened to have a banana that he brought to eat. And then he was like, and then he went and did it. So I don't know if
they'll let the intrusive thoughts win.
I don't know if that
might place it a little higher.
Influences this at all. But
no, I wouldn't.
We love Omar Cornut. Also, his last name's Cornut. So let's not forget. So God, that's at least number 3 on the list. No.
I think we're putting.
I think it's between 18 and 19 is where I put it.
Yeah,
our new number 19.
Cool.
I really wanted Anodyne for me is it's actually a pretty recent game that we can put on here, which is rare. But that didn't really work out. That is definitely the newest game on here.
What is?
Maybe not newer than SNK. Anodyne.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anodyne.
It's just you kind of alluded to this at the top of the show, Jaffe, but games in this range that are actually looked at now just don't exist, right? It's
true.
It's everything's above 80.
Yeah. They've gone extinct.
You kind of got to look for specific sorts of games to get something that's under 80 from a specific period before the critical establishment at large learned what to like and why.
Yeah, when I looked at Wolfenstein in my collection, I was like, I just bet that's under 80.
Yeah.
Sneaked in there.
Yeah.
So it's like Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, which one could say is it's a new Wonder Boy game.
Mm-hmm.
That's an 86 on Metacritic. And it has
weird.
a lot of 90s, et cetera, et cetera. It's a
pretty good game, actually.
Yeah, it actually is fantastic. I really like that game. That's a real
Tim,
good one.
You're rounding it up.
We got one slot left.
I'm on the last one, so I'm gonna go through a list here. I think I've made my decision, so let's just go through my list that I have of stuff remaining. I disqualified God Hand. We did Steamboat Chronicles, Raw Danger. In terms of shooting games, one that's definitely that is a below 80 on Metacritic. These are all below 80 on Metacritic. That I just can't, in good conscience, put up here would be Stranglehold, John Woo's Stranglehold. By Midway. I'm a big fan of that era, the Xbox 360 era of Midway games. I think there's just something beautiful about all of them. I just think they're neat. Stranglehold is the best fusion of QTE and action. I just think it's a really wonderful game that kind of falls off after the first couple of levels. After the first level where you have to search for meth labs and blow them up in a map that's too big and performs poorly. The first level, the demo, is fantastic. But it kind of falls apart. But all in all, in terms of raw satisfaction, it's a very beautiful sub 80 game that I'm going to not, because we put that Wolfenstein on here, which is just a better game. But Stranglehold's a weird one. Similarly, Midway's Wheelman, I really like a lot. With Vin Diesel's Wheelman, based on a movie that's never came out, that never got finished. I think it's a really neat open world arcade style Grand Theft Auto which is a genre of game that just does not otherwise exist. Another game on my list that I love a lot is the PSP RPG. Brandon wanted a portable game, Dungeon Maker Hunting Ground, which is one of my favorite games of all time, where you build a dungeon by going into it and fighting monsters. You're a guy who's building a dungeon in his local town for all of the monsters hanging out on the outskirts of town to live in. So that they don't harass the people. And every day you can eat meals and buff your stats and then go to bed and wake up. And it's just and then you can go into your friends' dungeons. I had a lot of fun with that game. Me and my buddy both played it. That's a 70. I said earlier in the show that...
I almost put Brave Story on there. That's a 76.
Brave Story's on mine too, yeah. Brave Story fell off because of Lost Odyssey. It had to be one or the other. Brave Story's a good game. It's a portable game. I don't feel like it has to be portable. I feel like I played through a lot of it last year on my TV in PPSSPP, which is the leading PlayStation portable emulator. I really enjoy that game. And then another PSP game, Monster Kingdom Jewel Summoner. I was saying earlier that I didn't want to include anything that was like a Persona game that that later got the Persona series is now a critical darling, et cetera, et cetera. Monster Kingdom Jewel Summoner is a game with much Shin Megami Tensei pedigree that doesn't get talked about by anyone at all, really. And it was a 66. That's a real interesting case of critics at the time just having no idea how or why to like a thing. People still don't. Monster Kingdom Jewel Summoner, real neat game. There's a multitude of Idea Factory games I could have thrown on here.
Yeah, I feel like Idea Factory I feel like those games
are designed.
I feel like they almost aim for being that score.
Oh, they try, which is why I think they're being manipulative. Some games that I have on here, they're being manipulative of the 7 out of 10 likers. So some other games, Bionic Commando 2009. The great Capcom the Western Japanese Lost Planet so we
starring Mike Patton.
Yeah, I have all the Lost Planets on this list or Lost Planet 1 and 2 and Bionic Commando. They all struck me as just Japanese games on the Xbox 360 that were made for the Xbox 360. And I know Bionic Commando came out on some other stuff, didn't it? But that's a 70, and that was a game that people didn't know they should like just yet because they didn't have all the Resident Evil remakes to show them that they liked Resident Evil and they liked classic cheesy Capcom games. Capcom made a whole bunch of good cheesy games. A couple more. I have Brave Story, which we just talked about. Wild Arms XF, Wild Arms Crossfire, got a 64, and that's a tactics RPG for the PSP, which I love because it has really good one-hit kill mechanics if you have a clear vantage point and elevation. You have all this. It becomes really tactical, and it's a really neat tactics RPG with guns, which is kind of and the guns are very interestingly mechanically balanced. Pandora's Tower by Ganbarion for the Nintendo Wii is another game that I like a lot that I feel like didn't get assessed super well. A lot of trash on here. We're coming down to the final ones. That I'm going to talk about. Concept Saga for Xbox 360 is one of my favorite put it on and chill games. I really, really loved the heck out of that game. Again, Japanese Xbox 360 game. I'm a big fan of those. I could fill a list of 20 of those that are all-timers if I had to. So here we go. We're down to the final three. And I'm going to talk about the one I disqualified. The first one to go is Nobi Nobi Boy, which was a 75. I love Nobi Nobi Boy. I think it's one of the coolest things ever made. But I understand that it got a 75 because everybody thought it was going to be the next Katamari.
Yeah.
All of the reviews are fixated on the fact that it only costs $5, which is very interesting. It's the price of a sandwich. First of all, if that was the price of a sandwich for you, you don't live in New York City, Carl, where a sandwich costs $29 or whatever. I don't eat sandwiches. I don't eat bread. But Nobi Nobi Boy it got overshadowed by the idea of a sandwich, which kind of makes it an interesting game to put on a list. And
Nobi Nobi Boy itself being largely an idea.
It never really escaped the idea prison of itself, which is it's a kind of a marvelous little. It's a neat little factoid of a video game, and I feel like the Outrun Online Arcade entry kind of stomps that one because that also had someone saying it's too expensive. $10 was too expensive. Yeah. $5 was too cheap.
I could buy 2 sandwiches for that.
I could buy 2 sandwiches instead of this stupid game. Right? So it's like I don't understand that. So we're down to my final 2 here. One I'm gonna drop off right now, and I was waiting to see what y'all's final decisions were. Brandon chose a shooter, and Frank chose a platform game. So I've got 2 games left that are both Japanese video games for the PlayStation 2, released at right around the exact same time. And I'm going to tell you, one of them is an RPG and one of them is a platformer. So I'm going to disqualify the RPG, which is Wild Arms 5, which is the best Wild Arms game.
The Veeth Vanguard.
The Veeth Vanguard, as it was called in Japan. The English version is just called the 5th Vanguard, which is like, okay, that's boring. The Veeth Vanguard.
The Veeth Vanguard is so fun to say and think about somebody thinking about.
It's incredible, yeah. So Wild Arms 5 is a beautiful, beautiful video game that I love a lot. It's 60 FPS as heck. It's a very, very, very good battle system, one of the best battle systems ever in an RPG. It's got the hex grid of 7 hexes, and there's really meaningful. It's very tactical in a really fun way. Better than Lost Odyssey in terms of battles. It's just a very virtuosic, fun, beautiful video game, but it's not my pick. My pick is Brandon teased Balan Wonderworld, and then Frank put on Wonder Boy Dragon's Trap. So I've got to put a 3D platform game on here, and there's only one that fits the bill. At the time it was released, I said it was better than Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine, and got very, very yelled at by the readers of my own website. I later said that it was better than Super Mario Galaxy, which got me very yelled at by readers of other websites. I don't really possess off the top of my head a list of the best 3D platform games of all time. The ones I like the most were made by people who later went on to make Uncharted and The Last of Us, so it feels gauche to list them. What better game to nominate for the end of this list than a game by a studio that was so good at making video games that were so good at being these types of video games that never got a chance to go on and make Uncharted and The Last of Us because Sony shut them down. God darn Ape Escape 3, dude.
Oh.
God darn Ape Escape 3.
Ape Escape.
Ape Escape 3. I've told this story many times, but yes, there was a man who pronounced it Ape Escape at Sony Japan. He thought that's what it was called. He thought it was called Ape Escape because he didn't know the word ape.
That's a really good dish at an Italian restaurant. Don't worry.
Ape Escape isn't. The Ape Escape here is enough to make the Popa weep. Ape Escape ravioli. Ravioli di Ape Escape. So Ape Escape 3 is just one of the out-and-out beautifulest video games ever made in terms of the look. And I already earlier threw up Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter and said it talked trash on the erstwhile critics who bemoaned its lack of whimsy, pined for the primary colors of its predecessors. So I think it's fitting to throw on a really nice, beautiful primary colored game with the Mega Man Legends pedigree 3D graphical arts in it. That's Ape Escape 3. Just a wonderful little video game.
Have you read the top highest review blurb on Metacritic, which is from Computer Games Magazine, which says,
"Oh, I have.
This is the best and most spirited of the Ape Escapes, which is faint praise if you're only familiar with the recent half-assed PSP version."
Let's go ahead and just talk about the PSP version here. 90?
They gave it a 90, and they said it's faint praise. What we're giving, I don't know. It's very odd.
Oh man, so you're just opening yourself up to a nut kick from a British listener who's going to tell you that's called irony, Brandon. You don't get British humor, is what they're going to tell you.
Oh no.
Which is that's like, this is like literally the kind of statement I've seen British people try to say is irony when really it's just kind of an insane thing to say. No offense.
Yeah. I think an American wrote this because otherwise they would have referred to it as the half-arsed PSP.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just joking about British people here. Not even really. I don't care. I don't care if a British person actually wrote this or not. It's got some. It's weird because it has some high reviews, but then you get to the lower reviews and it's just people with a problem.
Yeah, the lowest review I can see is here on Eurogamer. It's not badly done. - a good, clean, simple, average game. Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's I guess, that's a low stakes thing to say. I would say if you're going to give something a 6 out of 10, say something high stakes. Is my I don't think you should put a score on anything. But if your boss puts a gun to your head or a knife to your throat and says you have to, if you're going to give it a 6 out of 10, say something high stakes for your Metacritic blurb. Say something we can laugh at. Like, what is this? I can play this game and comment on just the beauty of its fabric, its textile texture. It's just a wonderfully woven game.
There's so many game reviews about this. Gaming Target says Ape Escape 3 contains more than 400 monkeys and 3 minigames to keep players occupied. But despite all of that, it may feel like Monkey See, Monkey Do all over again.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect.
What is that?
This is the perfect game to end on because 3D platformers are like the genesis of the modern video game, Super Mario 64 and such.
Yeah.
So as such, they magnetize a particular style of review. At times, a big 3D platform game would get like the senior critic on a team. Like, we got to give it to him.
Unlike a fighting game, this is something that people feel very qualified to have opinions about.
Yeah. It seems like the easiest kind of game to talk about, but really there aren't They really, I mean, I've been over this before. I talked about this on something that I did somewhat recently, but it's there are so fewer 3D platform games than you actually might realize. It's a much smaller genre than you give it credit for. Because I mean, Super Mario 64 out the gate, it just instantly started spawning somewhat similar games that all had some twist, you know. And it's like we very quickly got away from the idea of just running and jumping. You know, man, some of these are one up. The costumes are a nice step in the right direction of adding new gameplay. What a hypothetical fourth game really needs is an entirely new set of gadgets to play with. We need new gadgets. Oh, please stop refining the gadgets that you have and give us just new ones that you don't have experience working with. Electronic Gaming Monthly 62, the go-go turbo Japanese cheerleaders on speed mood, and shallow, stupid puzzles are the sort of thing shut-in Naruto fans thrive on, but I found them irritating. Thankfully, it was short. Is this Sean Baby? Did Sean Baby write this?
He might have
sounded like Sean Baby.
Don't let Bennett Foddy hear that.
Yeah, Lord. Shutting. Yeah, Foddy loves Naruto.
Do we have an author? Do I need to go pull it?
Let's do it. Electronic Gaming Monthly, February 2006.
All right.
It can't be reached. It's a 404 on the internet. Official U.S. PlayStation magazine gave it a 60. Ape Escape 3's presentation is what really hurts the whole package. The graphics are mediocre, especially for a first-party game late in the PS2's life cycle. The voice acting is painfully stilted and the translation is woeful. Forget those last two sentences. The graphics are mediocre, especially for a first-party game late in the PS2's life cycle. Let's compare... Oh, God, who even cares anymore? Like, what am I doing here? This is pure podcast content at this point. Like, let's compare a game that was considered beautiful early in the PlayStation's life cycle to Ape Escape 3, which has not aged at all, and in fact looks magnitudes better than it looked at the time. These review blurbs are really heating me up. So I've got to say that I'm glad this was the one I went with. I feel like the Wild Arms 5 reviews would have also heated me up, but I think the Lost Odyssey was a better one.
No, I'm glad we're ending on getting mad at Metacritic.
Who we got, Frank?
Oh, wait, so February 2006?
If you're looking for a great platform game, then you'll probably be disappointed.
Did you say February 2006? Is that what you said?
Yeah, February 2006.
I pulled the wrong year.
Oh, crikey. It's page 108 as well, if you need to find that.
Nice.
For those mathematicians out there.
Go turbo Japanese cheerleaders on speed. Lord.
Yeah, that's a little offensive.
It's kind of exactly it. Man, and this person hypothetically didn't even hear the Japanese intro music. The American version just cuts the vocals out, but in the Japanese version, you have a little girl singing "Sadu Sadu 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 Get You," and it's really good. Sadu 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 Get You. Sadu 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 Get You. Yeah, the English version was they tried to sing "Ape Ape 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 Escape."
Oh,
Yeah, but
that's where that
there.
comes
Ape 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 Escape. Ape Ape Ape.
Yeah, they got Charles Martinet to do it.
Yeah, Lord. Ape Escape. Wahoo! I'm just making noises now while Frank prepares the magazine.
So it's a review crew situation.
It is a crew. Okay, find the go-go Japanese cheerleaders on speed.
Okay. It's probably not Justin who gave it an 8.0.
Yeah, it's 6.6 is the average. What are the numbers? Give me the numbers.
8.0 from Justin.
Okay.
I don't know who these people are. 5.0 from G Ford.
What?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm seeing where the 62 is coming from now.
And 5.5 from Kathleen.
Okay. Now, see, the diplomatic thing to do for Metacritic would be to pull
Kathleen is the Go-Go Turbo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be to pull the blurb from the middle review.
You want her full review?
Yeah, it shouldn't take too long to read because I believe they.
No, it's really short.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the EGM review crew colored the perceptions that I have to deal with in 100 hateful YouTube comments per week. Why is this long? It should only be a paragraph.
So this is probably a little bit longer than what's on Metacritic, but
yeah, let's hear it.
I understand the compulsion to trap hordes of furry creatures to populate a private zoo. Okay. When the creatures are actually damn dirty apes bent on world domination of the human race, well, hand me one of those silly chimpanzee snatching gadgets. I absolutely agree with Justin that the goofy lampoons make for fun levels and character morphs, but snaring those slippery simians never gets challenging enough to stay enjoyable past the initial, hey, how about that? It's a monkey Lord of the Rings moment. In fact, the only challenge comes from fighting the god-awful camera. Then it goes into exactly what you read already.
Game rules.
All right, where are we ranking it?
Top of the list.
Whoa.
I'm just kidding. No, not top of the list. I don't care.
It's got to be at least 3. At most 3, rather.
It has to be 3.
Let me see. I would put Sarugetsu, I'd put it around somewhere. I wouldn't put it above Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex myself.
I want to say real quick that editorial, meaning the table of contents, doesn't start until page 12 of this AGM.
So many ads.
What are the first 12 pages? Ape Escape 3 ads?
So yeah, I would put it below Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex myself.
I don't hate that.
2 reviewers gave Electroplankton a 5.0 out of 10.
Oh, that's great.
Anyone got a problem with 12?
I like that number.
I would put it above Ghost in the I don't know, but it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, that's our list. If you want to check it out as a listener, you can see it on our Patreon. You can see it on the forums.insertcredit.com. And do we have any last thoughts about Metacritic before we sign off? And the impact it's had on...
I think we kind of squeezed it a bit.
Yeah, I think we got it. But remember when I said this episode was going to be short because we knew all the games already? I was wrong again.
Oh, no, I didn't believe that.
Yeah,
so.
This one might come in a couple days late.
I sat at my desk. I sat at my desk for this, so...
Yeah. Here's what I'd like to say. I'd like to say if you listening have made it all the way to the end of this episode, then you surely enjoy Insert Credit. So why not rate and review our show however you can do that? You can also support us on patreon.com/insertcredit to pay everyone involved in this show except for Tim Rogers. If you'd like to sponsor our show with an advertisement, you could do that by contacting us at show@insertcredit.com.
And that money goes directly to Tim Rogers.
No, it does not.
The ad money just goes to me and Esper, actually.
It's true.
So Frank doesn't see a penny of that. You can join our community at forums.insertcredit.com or find videos of these episodes on youtube.com/insertcreditshow. This episode is edited by Esper Quinn with original music by Kurt Feldman. I'm Alex Jaffe.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Tim Rogers.
I'm Ape Escape.
And this list is perfect, this podcast is perfect, and I feel perfect.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's what I'm talking about.